Okay, David, are we ready? Okay. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I now call the special city council meeting of March 31st, 2026 to order. Next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Moving down to item 2 of the agenda, we have the land acknowledgement. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Ohlone people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Ohlone elders, past, present, and future, who call this place Ohlone land, the land that Pinole sits upon their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Ohlone community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Okay, thank you. We're now on to item 3, roll call and city clerk's report. Madam City Clerk, please.
Good evening, Mayor Tave.
Here.
I will note for the record that Mayor Pro Tem will be absent. Councilmember Sasai.
Here.
Councilmember Martinez Rubin.
Here.
Councilmember Toms.
Here.
Interim City Manager Evans.
Here.
Assistant City Attorney Mogg.
Here.
Mayor, the agenda was posted on Thursday, March 26th at 2:30 p.m. with all legally required notices. No written comments were received in advance of the meeting. Does the council have any conflicts to report on our agenda tonight? Seeing none, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Next on the agenda is citizens to be heard, item 4. So are there any citizens to speak tonight?
Yes, we do have 2 in person. We have Jennifer Horn and Richard Kossel.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here to continue the readings of the emails that were submitted against ballot measure 10A, a resolution calling for special election and submitting question regarding office of elected mayor to voters. This is from Janet Wilkes. She says, I voice my opposition to Agenda 10A, the resolution, etc., for the following reasons. 1, the expense to place this question on the ballot is extraordinary in light of A, the current fiscal position of the city, B, the condition of city roads, C, the necessity of managing through another city manager hiring process, and D, the lack of contract with the city's police department. The proposal is remarkably tone deaf when considering the protests of hundreds of thousands of people across our nation and the world that are clamoring against the consolidation of executive power and overreach of government. Is this really the time that you want a ballot measure proposing to consolidate executive power? Have you considered all the promised vocal opposition that will follow and that will shadow upcoming council member elections? Do you realize that any one of you who are not elected mayor, should the issue pass, will be sorely diminished of power and impact? A council member's statement that the current structure of rotating mayor position is archaic is a poor excuse for rational evaluation. Because a method has been used successfully for about 100 years does not inherently indicate that it is ineffective. Just the opposite, it's been working for a very long time. Is this proposed change for the sake of change alone? Is it intended to be a resume builder for aspiring politicians? Is it a power grab via consolidating executive power? There does not appear to be a compelling rationale for the proposed change. Council members have been following the social media comments, so there should be awareness that there are more than 5,000 hits across the various comments, and only one or two comments support the proposal. Many, many more express opposition. Is council listening to the community voices? Council was asked to move the agenda item to an earlier time to allow more Pinole residents to participate in the conversation. When council addressed this issue in December, the issue was discussed until almost midnight. Council did not respond to the email request nor to the request posted on social media on a council member's profile. The appearance here is that council does not want to hear from the Pinole community. A council member posted on Nextdoor in December 2025 that this question will go on the June ballot. How could this be known several months ago? Is the outcome predetermined? I urge council to not put the question on the June ballot nor any ballot. Shift your attention to pressing matters. A, hire a new city manager, B, secure a contract with the city's police department, and C, fix the roads. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Speaker. Next speaker, please.
Richard Castle, followed by Rafael Menace.
Hi there, Richard Kossel, resident of Pinole. I have good news and bad news. Start with the good news. When I was here last, I brought to your attention the issue with trash on the street that was what I thought was being generated by Amazon drivers tossing out food containers. Well, I don't know if you did something or if it's something I did, because now there's a marked reduction. No food containers, plastic cups, forks, that's all gone. So it's great. I don't know if it's something you did or if it's something I did, but that's good news. Now for the bad news. The city has opened itself up for lawsuits and federal funding loss possible. Okay. Regarding the $40,000 DEI consulting, DOJ, I've presented you the document. DOJ says it's going to restrict federal funding to cities that discriminate based on DEI policies. There's related lawsuits, 2022, Deemer versus City of Seattle, mandatory diversity training, race-based employee groups, violations of 14th Amendment, 2023, Meow versus City of Asheville, race-based preferences for commission violation of equal protection. Regarding the $14,000 and others for the Pride event. Now, I have no issue with you issuing permits to the Pride Parade, no problem with that. I have an issue with you funding it. And there's a reason why City and County of San Francisco does not fund their Pride Parade from the general fund, because it opens up to viewpoint discrimination. And there's actual lawsuits going on now with viewpoint discrimination. SCOTUS rulings, just start off with, is Rosenberg versus University of Virginia, 1995. That started it off. And then we had Shurtleff versus City of Boston, 2022. And then we have an ongoing one, and this is why I say this is important, is Mayday USA versus Los Angeles, denying a permit to a Christian group while approving LA Pride Parade at the same location. That's just a permit, not funding. You provided funding. You have opened yourself up to all other groups now requesting money for their events. That's an issue, and that's going to cause us money. And then what do I want? I want you to stop the waste, and I want you to fix the roads. And I've even brought a thing called pothole theory of governance. Got a problem? You tax it, you misuse the funds, you go broke. Got the problem still, tax it, misuse the funds, go broke. Got a problem, taxes, misuse, go broke. And I want you to stop the waste.
Thank you, Speaker. Next speaker, please.
Rafael Menace, followed by William Horton.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Rafael Menace. I'm resident of Pinole, and I have 3 topics I'd like to address tonight. First, since it's been 2 weeks since the last time I discussed this topic, the COVID-19 rates near the city of Pinole and wastewater trend continues to be basically flat since the last report, very low at all sites in Contra Costa County and low in most sites in Alameda County. There's one site at moderate and one site at high, but that's more towards the Santa Clara County border. I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, but overall, the relative risk of COVID-19 in Pinole remains low, as it has for the past several weeks, at least as of March 21st, because there's a bit of a lag of the data. Secondly, I'd like to thank Maria Picasso in particular for her assistance with the No Kings rally this past Saturday, there were some site issues when we arrived that she was able to address, and I'd also like to thank Public Works for assisting with that as well. The protest in Pinole overall went well. There was one minor injury that we were able to handle, and otherwise everything was peaceful and worked out well. I should also thank the police department for their making sure that everything went fine. There were no particular confrontations, any issues like that. And finally, I'd like to note that today, March 31st, is the National Trans Day of Visibility. And I would like to request that the council recognize that day in the future. Obviously, it can't today because it's a special meeting and you can't add items to future agendas or anything like that. But there are more people who identify with a gender different than the one they were assigned at birth than you might think. I'm one of them. I'm non-binary because I don't think that exclusively masculine or exclusively feminine are sufficient to define who I am in a gender context. So I think it would be worthwhile for the city to recognize not just the dead in the Day of Remembrance, but also the living in the Day of Visibility on the 31st in the future. And I would request that the council adjourn today's meeting in recognition of the living trans members of the Pinole community. Thank you.
William Horton.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is William Horton, and I'm a Pinole voter. Tonight I speak against Measure D on the June 2nd ballot. This directly elected mayor is a waste of $55,000 from the budget. First, there is no term limit specified to the elected mayor, which conflicts with council members having term limits. This is a conflict of logic for the public expectations. Secondly, there is no limit to the mayor's salary described. In fact, the mayor's salary could be increased at any time by a vote of the council. Vote no on Measure D on the June 2nd ballot. Good evening.
Thank you, Speaker. Next speaker, please.
That concludes public comment.
Okay. So moving on to item 5, old business. We don't have old business. Item 6, new business. Interim City Manager Evans, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. Welcome to the first workshop for the fiscal year 26-27 budget. I love budgets. I've always viewed my role as city manager to bring a balanced budget to the City Council and the community. I believe that is the core mission as a city manager. Some years, it's nice and easy. Some years, it's a little messy. This year, we have a little more messy than simple and easy, but as I've told staff and emphasized, we will get there, and we will give the City Council a plan to make sure that it's balanced moving forward. So, as we lay this out here tonight, a lot of times at this point, right after mid-year, and we're presenting a budget to the council, it's kind of like making a cake. And right now, we're pulling together all these different kind of ingredients, and we may find out, ooh, you know what, you can't use milk, somebody's lactose intolerant. Oh, can't use eggs. So over the next month, we're gonna tweak the budget a little bit from what you see tonight. And a lot of that's gonna be guidance and suggestions by you all. But ultimately, we're gonna pop it in the oven and bake it and come back to you with a plan for a balanced budget. And so I'm really looking forward to you all giving us that guidance and your thoughts. So how I would like to recommend to the mayor and the council, or our thoughts, staff will make presentations here from the various departments on what's going on within their budgets. They'll touch at a very high level the accomplishments and goals. Generally, that's more for your strategic workshop that you have once a year, where you sit down and you can really get into, as a group, we want to see these goals in public works. We want to see infrastructure. You know, we want to make sure PD has the resources, necessary. that we have senior and tiny tot events and all of those things. Then after, as each department though is making its presentation, please feel free to ask questions if you want more detail. We'll jump in there, and then we'll take that information, sort of close out all the different departments, and we've got a list of about a dozen. And each one, we're trying to keep to about that 5-minute or 10-minute, because otherwise we'd be here for all night, and we're trying to be cognizant of that. Once it comes back, we'll give it to the city council for any kind of comments you all may have, additional comments. Then we would ask if you would open up for public comments. And then obviously back to the city council for direction. As we go into this, and I'm about to introduce the city attorney with the presentation here, I really do want to thank staff for all of their hard work putting this together and over the next 3 months. This is something that, I think is a lot of fun, I enjoy, and I'm sure everyone in this room will agree with me. So, any questions, Mr. Mayor?
So, City Manager, just so that we're clear on format,
Yeah.
we want to move through all 12 presentations, then have a Q&A session?
No,
or do we
you
want to
can-
try to
By
have?
all means, the four of you can ask away if the city attorney or information technology, if you have some questions as we go through.
Okay.
I've heard this is a little bit of a different format, so we're kind of feeling our way through this one.
So are we, okay, so I think what I'm thinking here is that we'll let each department give their presentation, council will ask questions, and then we'll move to the next presentation,
Yes, sir.
while the audience or the, members of the public will save questions for
Correct.
public comment.
Correct.
Okay.
And that way we can hopefully get a good flow.
Okay.
We will be more than happy, should any of the members of the public want to follow up afterwards, I'd be happy to meet with them and discuss this more in detail as well.
I think for me, it's making sure that the public comment gets on record, those questions get on record, right? And I think those need to be addressed as this thing starts to form up and presented in a formal meeting. So we would ask public speaker or the public comment and people in the audience to make sure we have those questions. And more importantly, they're up and able to ask those questions of staff and get that on record.
Yes.
Okay.
Get it on record, and we may, hopefully we have the answers, but if not, we will get them and then follow up with them
Okay.
as well.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Sounds good.
All right, I'll start off with the city attorney.
I think the finance director wanted to say
That's
it.
right. Yeah, kind of taking away all the fun she has.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, members of the public, city staff. For this item, I will kick it off with a general overview of what will be presented in more detail by the departments. So I'm just going to share my screen here, just a moment. So first, starting off with the recommendations, staff recommend that the City Council receive presentations from city departments on the preliminary baseline operating budgets for fiscal year 2026-27 and provide direction to staff. So the topics to be covered will include an overview of the preliminary budget, department presentations, and then we can discuss next steps. So just looking at our overall budget cycle, we are in the formulation phase of the budget cycle where we're putting the budget together. We have a number of key dates listed here that are key to us completing this work and presenting to you a balanced budget. So we started off with a couple of finance subcommittee meetings, and you received some preliminary information during those meetings as well. Between February and March, we worked on department budget entry. So each department entered their proposed budgets into our financial system. Tonight, we have the budget workshop. throughout April, we'll have internal department budget review meetings, which will include each individual department along with the finance team and the city manager to take a deeper dive into the proposed budgets. On May 5th, we plan to present the preliminary proposed fiscal year 2026-27 operating and capital budget, and then we continue to refine it and bring back the additional versions, which includes the revised proposed, and ultimately the final proposed budget to be adopted on June 16th so that it goes into effect on time, and that would be July 1st, which is the start of our fiscal year. So just another view of the preliminary long-term financial forecast. This was presented to the Finance Subcommittee at the budget meeting. And at that time, what we discussed was looking at the fiscal year 2026-27 budget before departments entered their budget. And the forecast suggested a budget shortfall of approximately $718,000. So this is just a reminder of what was presented to the Finance Subcommittee and wanting to share that with the full City Council. What we can also see from this financial forecast is by the fiscal year 2031, we're looking at a budget deficit of approximately $5.6 million because the pension and OPEB trust will have been exhausted by that timeline if we continue to use those resources as we are currently. Looking at some of our budget pressures going into the new season for fiscal year 2026-27, overall general fund revenues are projected to increase 2%, while overall expenditures are projected to increase 5%. Our major tax revenues, which includes our property tax and our sales tax, are projected to increase 3% and 2% respectively. Pension and other benefits projected to increase 9%, and our professional services are projected to increase 5%. And that's primarily due to increases in contract service agreements. So that includes the agreement that we have with ComFire, in addition to other county services, including the library and animal control services. As I mentioned, the pension and OPEB trust is expected to be fully exhausted by 2031, and the deficit is projected to grow by then if any budget balancing measures are not put into place starting this year. So on the flip side, looking at some of the budget highlights, the Pinole voters did pass Measure I. That enabled the city to maintain service and staffing levels. The city continues to maintain a separate general reserve, so this is separate from the general fund, and it includes 25% of ongoing general fund operating expenditures or 3 months of coverage. The city also established a new OPEB trust or other post-employment benefits and funded it with $2.4 million by reducing the general reserve from the 50% target to the 25% target. So looking at citywide staffing, these are the staffing that's included in the budget numbers that you will see tonight in terms of salaries and benefits. At this point, the city is not, or staff is not proposing to add any positions, so you won't see any changes. We look at the last row for the total full-time equivalents. We see that total non-sworn and total sworn remain at the status quo of approximately 117 full-time equivalents. I'd also like to point out in the fiscal years 2021-22 and 2022-23, the city did undergo a major reorganization, which added a number of positions. But between 2022-23 and 24, you see a reduction there down to 115, and that was due to the fire department transitioning to ComFire. Since then, positions have remained fairly stable. So going through our key revenue assumptions that we use to build the budget, we have a number of resources that we use, that we take into account, and these are the numbers that you have before you tonight are based on these assumptions. So our sales tax and property tax are based on our projections provided by the city's consultant, which is HDL. Our utility users tax is based on historical trends and current utility rates. Franchises based on historical trends and the contracts or agreements that we have in place. Our other taxes, which includes business license and transient occupancy tax based on historical trends. Our intergovernmental taxes, which is primarily the vehicle in lieu fee, is also provided by HDL. It's a form of a property tax. And then our grants are based on current awards. So we didn't assume any new awards unless we have the award in hand. For permits and fees, those are based on historical trends, and we also include inflationary factors. We are working on a comprehensive user fee study citywide, and we have taken those increases into account. The public safety charges are based on the current contracts that we have with the cities of Hercules and San Pablo. Other revenues are based on historical trends, and then lastly, our transfers in our pension and OPEB, the amounts that we transfer in from the pension and OPEB trust. So looking at a couple of our highest tax revenues, with property tax being one, just wanted to show the breakdown of what the city receives on each dollar for our property tax. So the city receives approximately 19% or 19 cents on the dollar from each property tax dollar, and the rest is shared amongst a number of public agencies that you see listed here in the graph. Looking at sales tax, the city receives about 2.5 cents, and that's due to the standard 1% Bradley-Burns sales tax. And then in addition to our 1.5%, which we generate from our local sales tax, the Measure S 2006 and 2014, as well as the new Measure I. And again, those the rest of the dollar is shared amongst other public agencies for other services. So here's a summary of the general fund preliminary revenue budget. We're looking at total revenues of $32.1 million. As we can see from this table, approximately 81% of the city's revenue is generated from tax revenue, so property, sales tax, utility, franchise, and so on. The $1.9 million, again, charges for services, and that's due to the Tri-Cities agreements that we have with Hercules and San Pablo. And then another large category, which is our intergovernmental, and that's the vehicle in lieu fees. The second row from the bottom, which is our transfers in from the pension trust, we are budgeting approximately $3.4 million to be transferred into the general fund. So looking at our key expenditure assumptions, salaries and wages are based on the 117 full-time equivalents that you saw listed in the staffing chart. We assumed a 3% across the board salary increase, and that's just based on agreements from the current year. For benefits, this is PERS only. It's based on valuation reports that are provided by CalPERS that assist us with budgeting and projecting to the future. All other benefits are based on historical trends, and we also receive rate information later in the year. Professional and admin services, again, this is primarily the contracts that we have with the county. Other operating, which is primarily our utilities, those are based on historical trends and current rates, which are usually goes along with cost inflation. Materials and supplies are interdepartmental charges, as well as asset and capital outlay for non-CIP items are based on historical trends and adjusted for inflation. Our debt service, so we have one outstanding debt that the general fund pays for, and that's the 2006 pension obligation bonds. That's based on the schedule. And then the transfers out are based on operating subsidies provided to other departments, which includes community services, specifically the recreation fund, community development, specifically the planning division, and Pinole Community Television, as well as a set contribution to the equipment replacement fund to build up funds and replace equipment. So looking at our preliminary expenditure budget for the general fund, total expenditures at this point total approximately $33 million, so a little less than our projected revenues. And we went with a different format for this slide, and you'll see this in the department presentations as well, where we were trying to build it in the way where we show the foundation of the budget and then build layers on top of that. So starting at the most foundational level, which is our salaries and wages, and then also our employee benefits, looking at the utilities, going up to debt service, our interdepartmental charges, and those are things that are pretty much set in the budgets at the outset. So we start with these areas where there's not much discretion on staff's end, and we build the budget on top of these after getting those numbers in or factoring those in. And then the green area in the middle there, that's our professional services, and you see a breakdown there of what that consists of. And again, as you can see, most of that is the fire contract as well as the maintenance expenditures that the city retains. Building and structure maintenance, equipment maintenance, and other services. And then from there, we build on those items that are a little less or a little more discretionary. So we have our administrative expenses, office expenses, travel, training, and so on as we go up the chart. And so you will see this as we continue with the presentations. We also provided information on professional and admin services, so breaking that category down a bit more, and you'll see the slide as well, because it's made up of several subcategories. So you have the general professional and technical services first, and then it's broken down into office expenses, travel, training, dues and memberships, and administrative costs. So just providing a bit more context to this category and what it entails. And then overall for the general fund, you see that for the fiscal year 2026-27 preliminary budget, the admin and professional and admin services total about $9.5 million. And then if we're comparing the total revenues to expenditures in the budget, total revenues again, $32.1 million. Expenditures projected at $33 million for an overall budget gap of $909,000. Also included some additional information. So there's a line that shows the one-time revenue, which is our pension and OPEB trust, and we're labeling it one time just because that trust is on schedule to be exhausted if we continue to use it in the same manner. And so if we were to pull that out, our shortfall would actually be $4.3 million. And that concludes the overall presentation. We will move to the city attorney.
Thank you, Markeisha. Good evening, Mayor and council members. It's good to be here today. It's been a while, but I'm happy to pinch hit while Eric's taking some well-deserved time in Hawaii with his family. So if you could go to the next slide, please.
Attorney Mogg, if we can,
yeah.
1 second. Did anybody have any questions from the council on overall? Didn't see anybody flagging. Okay.
Yeah, one question here.
Councilmember Toms, please go ahead.
Will the slides be available, either posted online or available to us at some point? Thank you.
Yes, they will be. They're being printed as we speak.
Councilmember Martinez-Rubin, please go ahead.
Yeah, on that last slide, Director Guillory, you said something about looking at the shortfall differently if we did something. So can you review that, please? It had to do with the OPEB funds.
So if we did not account for the $3.4 million that we're transferring in, which ultimately helps to balance the budget, the budget gap of $909,000, we would add that to the $3.4 million if we look at it below the line, and our budget gap actually comes out to $4.3 million.
If I could, through the mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you know, we were working with staff talking about really structural versus non-structural. Structural versus non-structural deficits. One-time funds, you always want to sort of bring below the line so that way you can really see all ongoing revenues, all ongoing expenditures, and we know what we have to correct to get back on track. This community is incredibly fortunate to have such a large fund available to help cushion, but like we all know, one-time funds expire if you use them all up.
Thank you both.
Thank you. City Attorney Mock.
Thank you. So the
Presentation. There we go.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank
So the city attorney's office is the legal advisor for the city. The city itself is the client, and we, the city acts through its city council. So we provide legal services to the full city staff, all of the departments, council, city manager, and act as a strategic advisor. Next slide, please. So as you know, the city contracts for legal services with Redwood Public Law. And there are a lot of people at the firm who work with Pinole. And so we just wanted to provide some faces to names you may have seen. Obviously, some of these people you know quite well, like Eric, but there are specialists throughout the firm who work on Pinole matters. So, Eric does lots of code enforcement, assists code enforcement staff. Jesse Ladd is a labor and employment attorney with the firm who works, closely with Stacy on matters. John Getz is a real estate attorney who I believe the council met recently, who is replacing Stephanie Downs, who worked with Pinole for probably 20 plus years and is retiring now. And so these are people at the firm who work with the city, but they're not employees of the city, and Eric uses them as needed. When there's a labor and employment matter, he's calls upon Jesse, but Jesse otherwise isn't working on Pinole matters, isn't a cost to the city. And hopefully some of these you go a year and you don't need to use our litigation folks is ideal. But next slide, please. So just to touch on 2 or 3 accomplishments from this list. We assist with housing element implementation. Obviously, that's a really big issue in California and critical for the city to keep its housing element in compliance. So we assist staff with drafting and reviewing ordinances and programs for that, as well as working with community development on the full life of a development project, from application through issues that come up during building permit processes or certificate of occupancy issues as well. Like I mentioned, work closely with Stacy on labor and employment issues, labor negotiations, HR matters, city manager, transition and the upcoming recruitment. And then also, when there's litigation, manage all of that litigation. So that includes litigation handled by Redwood, as well as outside litigation by other firms or by the risk pool. Eric, supervises that and advises on all of that. So for the coming year, next slide, sorry. For the coming year, just to pick out 2 or 3 of these, obviously, a big one is working and advising the city council on potential revenue measures. As the council explores those, we've worked closely at the council's direction in the past on Measure I and getting that on the ballot and the special legislation related to that. And, we'll work closely with staff and the council on whatever revenue measure it may choose to pursue in the future, assisting with the development of the commercial cannabis ordinance and implementing that as the council directs and moves forward on. That's a big one. And then something that we are continuing to do is, at the council's direction, work on disposing of certain city properties and selling them, bringing in revenue for the city. Some of these are old RDA properties, but not all. So this includes, Pinole Shores, which has been going on for quite some time, the Faria House property, the post office property, and there are a couple of others. But we anticipate continuing to work on those in the coming fiscal year. Next slide, please. So this is the budget. It represents a 3%. The proposed budget for next year represents a 3% increase over the adopted budget for this year. And because, you contract with Redwood, we aren't, there's no salary costs or benefit costs. These costs are incurred, when city needs services. So it's, some of them are routine and happen every, we know there's going to happen, Eric's going to be at these meetings, every council meeting, but other things sort of ebb and flow as departments and staff have issues that need assistance, or the council provides direction for certain projects. And so that changes over time, where what departments we're working most closely with, really changes over time based on what's happening in the city. Some of our work are charged back to departments through interdepartmental charges. There's a relatively, I'd say, significant chunk. It's a minority, but a significant chunk that is recoverable from, developers or, code enforcement cases that gets reimbursed from outside of the city. But that results in the sort of line item of 368, 340 for the upcoming year, excluding, that number does not include the interdepartmental charges that are accounted for elsewhere in the budget. So with that, I'll pause, Mr. Mayor, if there's any questions. Happy
Okay,
to answer those.
do we have any questions from council members? Questions and only questions. We have a lot to get through. Doesn't seem like there are any. Thank you. All right, next presentation, please.
Waiting for it to come up. I'm just waiting for it to come up. Okay. Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Roxanne Stone, the Deputy City Clerk, and I will be presenting the budget, the overview of the City Clerk Department. Thank you. So I'll begin with our mission. The City Clerk's mission is to fulfill the role as elections official, legislative administrator, and records manager for the city in an efficient, professional, and friendly manner, to provide outstanding support to the council throughout the legislative process, and to serve the citizens of Pinole as an accessible and responsive representative of transparent and open government. Next slide, please. So next, I'll review some of our major accomplishments during the fiscal year 2025-2026. So we implemented online filing system and financial disclosure forms required by the FPPC. We also created and delivered training programs for the commission staff, liaisons, and commissioners. We revamped the citywide records management program, including adopting and updating the city's retention schedule. We also implemented new citywide retention schedule and worked with all departments to improve record practices. And we also updated the City Clerk Department administrative policies and procedures. Next slide. This next slide provides an overview of staffing for the City Clerk Department. As you can see from the table, we've maintained 3 full-time employees for the past 4 years. In fiscal year 2021 and 2022, Council approved an adjustment to staffing to address the increased need for support created in part by the hybrid public meeting model and increased public records request. Next slide. For the next fiscal year, the City Clerk's Department will continue to work on improving citywide records management. In addition, we'd like to highlight the following goals listed on the screen. We'd like to improve citywide electronic records management. We would like to work with IT to improve the model used for internal staff shared records, intranet pages, and implement new models citywide, and also develop and provide ongoing training to staff on all records management policies and tools. Next slide, please. On this slide is a snapshot of our 2026-2027 budget. You'll note that there's no budget for the capital outlay or materials and supplies categories. So we have our dues and publications, our travel and training, office expenses. And I'd like to note that the administrative expenses of $28,500, this does include election costs charged back from the county. And also the professional services amount of $40,350. This does include the codification of the municipal code, the FPPC filing tools, and support for boards and commissions and recruitment management and training modules. Next slide. This slide is a summary of our professional administrative services budget for the upcoming fiscal year, as well as the past 3 years. There is a little bit of variance between the years depending on the support required for projects. And I want to note, just on the previous slide, that there's an increased cost for elections when that cost is calculated and set by the county, and it's charged to administrative expenses. Next slide. And this last slide is the total budget summary for the city clerk's department with the total amount. I'm sorry, I can't see that. That's $845,035. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, keep moving.
All right, up next will be the city council's budget. All right, so the mission of the city council is to create safe, healthy, prosperous community. We'll go on to the next slide, please. And with the layers that you see here, just wanted to sort of maybe raise it up a few feet here. The blue and green are more or less the professional and administrative services charges, just to reemphasize those. And then I guess we're calling it salmon. Okay, we're going to call it salmon. Is what I guess more that administrative, whether it's salaries, wages, utilities, those kind of set costs. Sometimes it could be separated, some are discretionary, some are non-discretionary. Usually the salmon would be a non-discretionary, you have those costs built in. So looking at the city council budget then on the next slide, looking at the professional and administrative charges in particular, you can see whether that's, there's some office expenses, travel, dues, and administrative expenses. The dollar has stayed the same from this current fiscal year to next year, so there is no increase there. And, certainly we will look forward to looking at all these different charges as we go through the next month or so, working with the subcommittee. On the next slide is the total budget summary, which is $281,000 for anticipated for 26-27. And most of that then is increased from the non-discretionary amounts, or the salmon, if you will, the salmon color. Happy to take any questions or comments on the city council budget.
Do you have any questions or comments? Okay, see none.
Okay.
Keep moving.
Okay. The next up would be the city manager's budget. And city manager's mission is to do everything that the 5 council members tell him to do, but it's also very written nicely here, is to support the city council and policy development, to lead the city staff and operations, to ensure efficient and effective service delivery. Next slide, please. Some of the accomplishments for this fiscal year that are going on. IT, bringing in IT, coming up with revenue strategies and supporting the council as we identify those. The Media and Communications Fellowship Program, a great program. And then also working on the 360 Public Assistance Portal to try and improve our interaction with the public and make sure that they can let us know how we're doing. And then a Citizens Academy program as well. Staffing has not changed for the city manager's office for this year. It's basically you have two folks, the city manager and then the communications director. The goals set for this upcoming fiscal year would be to increase the communication strategies and engagement, really implement or take that citizens request portal and promote it and really try and take it to the next level. The SB 707 and WCAG 2.1 AA is basically state and federal expectations on accessibility for folks on websites and meetings and how we incorporate those into the city of Pinole's practices. There's also working on providing basic information on any ballot measures that may be coming about, legislative advocacy programs, and looking at staff safety and equipment that is in City Hall. There's some best practices that could be improved here that should be looked at. Next slide, please. Anticipated opportunities. A good thing with a lean city manager's office is you can really reduce some of your expenses and focus or prioritize projects or reports to the council. Again, expanding the fellowship program is a fantastic opportunity, and looking at how to really leverage digital communications. I think Fiona's done a great job, and it's just going to build as we go along here. She's done a great job of bringing in interns and other non-paid staff to really help leverage that as well. Next slide, please. Anticipated challenges. Well, that's prioritizing. You know, when you have a tighter budget, how do we work with the council, meeting your objectives and your goals, but also prioritizing to make sure we're timely in returning that information to you all. Next slide, please. So as we look at the budgets, whether it's, again, the blue and green being professional administrative services, it's a pretty lean budget, and you know, most of it, frankly, is personnel cost. When you have a department of two and you look at the costs that are there, you don't see a high amount in consultants or otherwise. That's a pretty small number typically in a city manager's office. Next slide, please. And then when we look at year over year expenditures in this, it's also holding much lower than, I guess that would be 24, 25. Again, city manager's office should try and lead the way in holding cost as much as possible. Next slide, please. And so the budget summary overall is holding that trend, and I'm sure we will be looking a little bit tighter to see if we can get that number lower than 25, 26. Any questions you may have on that?
Councilmember Sai.
Thank you for this part of the presentation. Interim City Manager had a question on the SB 707 implementation. This is the Brown Act legislation, correct?
Correct.
Gotcha. Is the city clerk's office also working on implementation of that, or is it mainly city manager's office, or how is that split between the city managers and city clerk's office?
The city clerk, we are working on it, and I believe Heather will be bringing a report back to council.
Gotcha. In terms of the city manager's office
All the credit goes to the city clerk.
Gotcha. But in terms of the goals for this next fiscal year, the city manager does play a part in that?
We do, and I will work with Heather upon our return to make sure that the credit goes where the credit belongs.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council members? Okay, seeing none.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Andrew Haber, the IT manager, and I'm here with Director Epps to present the IT budget for fiscal year 26-27. Next slide, please. The mission of the Information Technology Division is to maintain hardware and software throughout the city organization. The division collaborates with other city departments to conduct business process reengineering and to select and implement appropriate technology to meet city needs. The division manages information services citywide, including network administration, city equipment and software maintenance, and end user support. Major accomplishments for the IT department for fiscal year 25-26 include the setup of internal IT department operational infrastructure, the completion of several network infrastructure improvements in City Hall and the Public Safety Building, and the completion of a citywide software and IT evaluation that did result in roughly $82,000 in savings by discontinuing, downsizing, or removing department redundancies. Next slide. This slide shows the department staffing over the last 5 years, which up until the current fiscal year was 0 FTEs, as all IT functions used to be outsourced to an outside service provider. Some of the goals for fiscal year 26-27 include completing the transition to an internal IT department, strengthening cybersecurity protections and infrastructure, conducting citywide training on the AI policy, completing citywide Windows 11 upgrades, completion of the 26-27 to 31-32 IT plan, supporting emergency preparation by completing the business continuity and disaster plan and assisting the police department in equipping the emergency operations center and continuing to implement network connectivity improvements. Some anticipated opportunities for the department in 26-27 include more effective and expanded IT services due to hiring of an IT technician, thus reducing professional services by roughly $127,000. Centralizing IT administration and oversight to help identify operational cost savings opportunities such as internet, telecommunications, and security totaling around $30,000 in savings. Additionally, continued software evaluation and process improvement and consolidation can bring cost savings of around $82,000. And the exploration of grant opportunities in collaboration with other departments could bring revenue of around $130,000. Some additional opportunities and goals for the department include improving network security and reliability by redesigning the city's core network, establishing IT governance and policies, and increasing IT service quality and responsiveness.
And I just wanted to add to explain what these savings mean as far as their impact on the budget. So just because you see the savings here doesn't mean that the budget will shrink by that much. What this shows is that we've identified savings that help to offset some of the growing costs and to minimize the impact on the budget.
Some anticipated challenges for 26-27 include increasing expenses for software and equipment. Global AI demand has been causing high volatility and spikes in computer hardware pricing. Process improvement needed citywide and could require some software upgrades of greater than $1,000. Firewall replacements are needed and are costly and can be upwards of $50,000. There are potential opportunities to share some of the costs with Hercules and San Pablo as part of the Tri-City dispatch agreement, however. And lastly, fiber evaluation and replacement is long overdue and is costly and can be over $60,000.
All right, so here is our expenditure budget summary. At the top, we have our capital outlay. That is made up of mostly one-time expenses of IT equipment such as upgrades, replacement associated with citywide projects. And some of the plans we have for next year include a panic button and security system, firewalls, PC replacements, network infrastructure, and EOC equipment. Our office expenses are for postage machine and related postage. Administrative expenses, this subcategory contains software subscriptions and new software purchases that are planned for next year. The professional services budget is allocated for consulting. This was decreased by about $152,000 from the year prior to help fund, we changed that over to fund IT staff for the internal department. Software maintenance, this has increased from last year because software was, we approached the IT budget differently this year, where we have actually moved software that was in the city, the various departments, and we've centralized it into the IT budget. So that's why you'll see an increase in the software for IT this year. And our network maintenance is also in the professional services budget. That is for data backup protection, firewall maintenance, cloud storage, and computer-aided dispatch and related records management. Equipment maintenance is also in the professional services. That is for copy machines and printers. And the rest goes towards special projects that are planned or anticipated for the upcoming year. So some examples of special projects for next year are digitizing records, a network and fiber assessment that's long overdue, as Andrew mentioned, and website improvements are some of the examples we would use those funds for. Let's see, office expense, admin expense, and professional services, they all make up the professional administrative services. So you'll see that $1,047,000. I'll talk about that on the next slide. And then moving down the budget, you've got your interdepartmental charges, our personnel costs, and that is for an IT manager and one IT technician. And with our total expenditure budget at $1.5 million approximately. And so this is breaking down our professional administrative services to show the trends across the different subcategories that make up this category of budget. So as you can see here, our numbers for 26-27 are coming to $1,047,000. And I just want to remind you that the professional and technical services, that does encompass costs like consulting, software, network maintenance, and the administrative expenses. They also contain software, but keep in mind, like I said, this has increased because we have moved all of the software from the various departments into IT. And then I just wanted to highlight our consulting trends for IT. We have significantly decreased by about 116% since fiscal year 23-24, our consulting budget for IT. And this is largely in part due to bringing our IT in-house. And then to sum it up, here is our IT budget summary with our reimbursements and total expenditures equating to about a $1.5 million budget. Thank you. I'll take questions.
Okay. Any council members with questions? Councilmember Sasai, sorry about that.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for this part of the presentation tonight. On slide 52, if PCTV can load it up over there, interested on increasing expenses for software subscriptions and equipment, that being over $20,000 for this year. Is that consistent with previous fiscal years, or is that a dramatic jump in just this year?
You know, it has been a trend year over year that we are seeing increasing software subscriptions. These increase by at least about 5% each year if we have existing subscriptions. Sometimes that number can increase due to us procuring a new software. So we might need to purchase additional licenses for AutoCAD for our public works engineers, for example, is something that we would needed to do this year. So it can be a combination of both the software increases themselves and procuring new software.
Okay, and the $20,000 increase, is that around the same as last year and previous years? Do you have that information?
It is about the same.
It's about the same.
Has been, yeah.
And then the firewall replacements, fiber evaluation is over $100,000 for both combined. Are those one-time expenses, and just happen to be that this year we need to replace those?
The firewalls, that does include a 5-year subscription for them. Okay. So this would be a one-time, and then we'd be good for 5 years for that.
Gotcha. And the fiber evaluation is also a 5-year?
Well, it would be more for like inspection and recommendation if we decide that, oh, we just want to rip and replace all of it, well, then that's a different dollar amount. But this is just for an initial evaluation.
Thank you. So we can expect the firewall replacements to be budgeted for every 5 years.
Yeah, if we keep up with it, yeah, you can do like a 1, 3, or 5 year. Usually with licenses, it's usually better. You get a better deal if you do a 5 upfront.
Very helpful. Thank you. I know in one of your goals for this fiscal year, strengthen cybersecurity. City of Foster City was hit with a ransomware attack, and thank you, Interim City Manager, for updating the council on that. Any extra steps that you can expand on and you'll be taking this year to strengthen our cybersecurity?
There are definitely steps, yeah. I don't have specifics to share tonight, but yes.
Okay, thank you. Look forward to hearing that.
Okay. The only question I had is, I know that we're required to have some network on site. I was wondering what the percentage would be for storage or cloud storage versus what we have on site.
It kind of depends on the backup strategy. There are some pretty dramatic cost increases with having like on-site storage, and a lot of that is due to global AI demand just driving costs up, and we're not necessarily seeing that so much on the cloud costs. So I don't know how it's split right now, but
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that more for the record so that when we start to have these discussions, whether there's a cost benefit to, I know that a lot of agencies are starting to move most of their storage to cloud-based, and partly because of the energy costs on site and the, servers need to be replaced on a cycle. And so rather than bearing that cost here, it makes sense. So I know that's not an answer for tonight, but if that could be evaluated as something that might be worth the investment.
the trend is definitely like most of the new software we are procuring is not hosted on premise, so that is mostly all cloud costs.
Yeah, okay. All right, any other questions from council members? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and keep moving. Thank you. Interim City Manager.
Next up, we have PCTV. Thank you very much.
All right, hi, I'm Fiona again, and I will be presenting the PCTV budget. So the mission of PCTV is to enhance civic engagement, government transparency, and community storytelling through accessible media resources. We provide high-quality video production, broadcasting, and digital media services to support the City of Pinole, local agencies, and community organizations in sharing important information, public meetings, and local stories. Some of our accomplishments from this year, from this past year, is that we've launched a renewed PCTV strategy. We did this using in-house staff. We provided AV support and broadcasting of city events and several community events and local news, including Amber Swartz's 45th birthday, the Wall of Fame Awards dinner, and Pinole Valley High School's homecoming football game. We supported the Media and Communications Fellowship Program with specialized media training. We built the PCTV dashboard, and that was by request of council. We completed another full year of the Beat of Pinole, which is our mayoral update broadcast series. We've increased awareness and viewership through community outreach and engagement. And in addition, we've completed a major haul of e-waste disposal and facilitated the new screen and click-to-share system installation you see here in the council chambers. We did this with Public Works. In our PCTV staffing, it's remained the same over the past several years, as you can see. We have 2 full-time staff members, and we have a handful of part-time cable operators and per diems, and we have about a dozen volunteers who are not pictured here, obviously, but who help tremendously with our PCTV operations. So our goals for next year, we want to ensure city accessibility compliance according to SB 707 and WCAG 2.1. And to elaborate on your question earlier, Councilmember Sasai, is that PCTV will be working with City Clerk, who is spearheading the SB 707 compliance, but there are certain requirements needed for cable broadcasting, closed captioning, language translation, and digital media that we will be assisting with. We will be evaluating the PCTV strategy to refine activities, staffing, equipment, and fee structure. Hire and train additional per diem cable operators. Replace remaining obsolete equipment, that's also known as e-waste. Increase sponsorship and fundraising efforts. Identify strategies for fiscally sustainable programs and funding, and foster workforce development through our volunteer programs. And we wish to deliver all of these things using a community-focused service delivery model. Some of our anticipated opportunities that we have for 26-27 include increasing viewership. We're hopeful that this engagement will attract more sponsors, and we're actively seeking sponsors. We would like to explore public access legislative advocacy to expand cable definitions to include internet streaming, which has been the trend for cable, and getting your local news, and collect respective fees from corporations. So that is something we'll be exploring this year. And continued new revenue identification by way of memberships, fundraising, grants, and outside contracts for services. So some of our anticipated challenges that we see this year. So decreasing cable franchise and PEG revenue. So nationwide, PEG stations and community media centers are experiencing funding shortages, and that's due to cord cutting, people who are not subscribing to cable any longer. And it's an industry-wide trend. So PCTV's revenue outlook for fiscal year 26-27 reflects those projected decreases. Currently, the city of Pinole receives around, between $250,000 to $280,000 worth of cable franchise tax funds, and so it comes in the form of a cable franchise tax and a PEG fee. PEG fees can only be used for cable public access related equipment purchases, just to differentiate between the two types. 3 to 5 years prior, PCTV did lose 2 outside contracts, which resulted in a loss of revenue. However, we are actively working to prepare proposals that will hopefully lead to new contracts next year, but that has a challenge on our revenue. Increased citywide demand for AV support. It does put a strain on executing the full PCTV strategy, which was very ambitious, and new content development as well, which drives viewership. And this is because staff are stretched, thin. To give you an idea of the work that we do, last year PCTV provided AV and video support for over 70 City of Pinole public meetings, 21 workshops, and 4 public events, plus client meetings and community media requests, which require dedicated hours that staff must balance with PCTV strategies to obtain sponsors, memberships, fundraising, and new content. And of course, working through the backlog of replacing outdated equipment. E-waste is very time-consuming, and so is procurement of new equipment too. And going through our expenditure budget summary, so everything in blue is showing everything that makes up the professional administrative expenses category. So you can see our capital outlay for equipment is $36,800. This is mainly funded by PEG fees, and we use it to purchase studio equipment and broadcast equipment, things like that are related to public access. Materials and supplies, travel and training. We fund, this is for 2 conferences and some broadcast-related specialized technical training throughout the year. Office expenses are at about $1,300. We're planning to buy a drinking water cooler this year. Administrative expenses. So what makes up administrative expenses? This covers costs that are related to ADA required technology and equipment for broadcast and public meetings, such as closed captioning. Other items purchased with this budget include, accessories like batteries, adapters, cloud storage. Then looking into next year, we've added budget, anticipating that there will be additional cost for any WCAG-related expenses that arise. Professional services covers consulting and broadcast-specific software, such as our master control system that we use. And then we have interdepartmental charges are made up of administration, IT, legal, and insurance used by PCTV. The consultant, I'm sorry, utilities, PCTV, we are allocated a percentage of the total PG&E expenses incurred by the youth center building. And then our personnel costs are, we pay for 2.75 FTE, and that is at $526,000 approximately, with a total expenditures of $680,000. And then here is our professional administrative services. So this is everything that you saw in blue. It's just broken down to show the trends over the years with our professional and technical services, office expenses, travel, training, and meeting, and our administrative expenses summing up to about $41,000 for the department. And here is our PCTV total budget summary. It looks a little bit different from other departments, so I'm going to explain why. So PCTV is funded by three main sources. We are funded by external revenues, and that is made up of our cable franchise taxes, PEG fees, and outside contracts we have with other cities, for example. Then we have city departments revenue, generated revenue, and this has increased this year because PCTV is switching back to using an internal pricing service model, and that is where departments are invoiced for the services that PCTV provides when they, put on workshops or run meetings and things like that. So PCTV sends an invoice to the departments, and then that is paid for through their budgets. Each department, they can pay usually they are paying this using mostly general funds. Some departments might use a special fund, such as the best example I can think of are the wastewater meetings. Those are funded by the sewer fund through their budget when they pay those invoices to PCTV. And then the general fund subsidy, so that is a transfer in. This is the total general fund that is transferred into the PCTV budget. This is to cover the gap between revenues and operating expenditures. Oops, and I will take questions about PCTV now.
Okay, any questions from council? Okay, I had a couple about the revenue. And it's somewhat related to the SB 707 compliance. You mentioned that we were having contracts with other cities. Has there been any talk about how other cities are complying with the 707? And is there an opportunity, I guess, there for us to help provide that service once we come into compliance?
Yes, we've been having good conversations with a neighboring city who's done a really great job with very limited resources since COVID to put together their public meetings. So we are working to prepare a proposal to submit to them within the next couple of weeks to provide these type of meeting production services and help them comply with WCAG and SB 707.
Okay, and that's accounted for in the revenue? Or is that something that's projected?
This is fairly new, so it is not accounted for in the revenue. But if we get lucky within the next, month or so, we might shape this into the final budget.
I see. So there are activities happening that could offset some of these costs and reduce that expense or increase the revenue and decrease expenses as we move forward.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Just those were the questions, but the rest were comments. Go ahead, Councilmember Sasai.
Thank you, Mayor. A question on the legislation you mentioned around the definition of cable services. Do you have a general sense of how much money small cities are missing when not collecting fees from internet services like Netflix, streaming services, and all those different services that folks use?
I don't have an exact number for you, but I can tell you that it's a nationwide problem. where many, many, if not all, of these community media centers and PEG stations are seeing reductions in their revenue. And so, we just joined actually a policy committee with the Alliance for Community Media so that we can meet and talk about what kind of legislative action we can do collectively to try to make some change and bring in some, identify other forms of revenue in the form of either legislation that will impose a fee on larger corporations, or and there's been some recent examples, like with the city of Santa Barbara versus Disney in California recently. So there is some movement around it, but it requires a lot of coordination between various media centers.
Is there an active bill right now on that issue, or is that to be introduced at some point?
There is a bill that has moved to another technology committee, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the code for that bill, but that's, it varies state to state, so that's a national bill that I was referring to. It's just kind of been tabled, and it's very vague. It's not really a strong bill, is what people have been talking about in the industry, but we're looking at, we have a strong, motivation in California to take a look at some options. And there are lobbying groups out there already who are doing some work. So it's just a matter of connecting the dots.
Thank you, and please keep the council posted on the advancement of that. We agree for Cal cities. This initiative, like you said, impacts pretty much all the different cities and counties in California. It would be great to have their support on that as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Okay. All right. Seeing no other questions, City Manager.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Up next, we have community development.
Good evening. My name is Keith Marks. I am the Chief Building Official and Acting Community Development Director, and along with the Planning Manager, David Hanham, we're going to make our presentation to you. Could we have the first slide? So the mission of the Community Development Department guides the orderly growth and development in Pinole. Our work ensures alignment with the general plan, city council priorities, while protecting community quality of life, health, safety, and welfare. The department consists of five different functions. The Planning Division manages land use, zoning, development, review, and long-range planning, including the housing element. The Building Division oversees building permits, inspections, and construction safety. While inspections and permitting are in-house, plan check services are outsourced to third-party firms, and the city retains a portion of the plan check fees. Then we have our code enforcement, which handles property maintenance and abatements to support community health and safety. Then we have the housing division, which manages the affordable housing initiatives, preservation of all at-risk units. And then we have the economic development that supports local businesses, downtown activation, and long-term commercial vitality. Go to the next slide, please. Slide number 2. So our first, some of our accomplishments that we had during the fiscal year of last year, we advanced the housing element program, including objective standards, accessibility, and ADU and JADU work. I'm just going to hit a few of these. We joined the Regional Brownsville Coalition and launched the core outreach pilot. We released new communication material for the code enforcement and building divisions, adopted the general plan and key ordinance updates, including the building code update. We secured over $1.8 million in grants supporting sustainability, adoption, energy projects, and enforcement. We're expanding the housing capacity with summer interns and launched an 8-part PAL program. And we also advanced economic development programs, including Business Spotlight, Made in Pinole, and community events. And we have slide number 3, please. Now, our staffing, this slide shows the staffing from 2022 to 2027. The department includes 10 FTEs, including a community development director, planning manager, associate planner, sustainability, project manager, a building official, building inspector, code enforcement officer, 2 permit techs, and the housing inspector. Now, the housing inspector was added in fiscal year 25-26 and continues to 26-27, expanding capacity for the city's rental inspection program. Our next slide is our goals. Can we have the next slide, please? So the goals that we have for next year include the housing element, implementing the housing element and launching the social impact bond program. We're going to continue to roll out the redesigned residential health and safety rental program, continue peer rebates and launching no-fee heat pump HVAC program, delivering CEC grant projects, and beginning MTC SB1 and Clean California grant projects, advancing REACH codes, proposing an off-road gas diesel equipment ban, and transitioning all city accounts to MCE Deep Green. We got the tobacco, conducting the DOJ-funded tobacco retailer compliance and decoy operation, updating both the community-wide and municipal GHG inventories, permitting and inspecting major housing developments, including APM Village Phase 2 and 3, and also Pinole Shores 2. Beginning funding the major long-range planning updates, the general fund, specific plan, and zoning ordinance, and then completing searching and preparing council direction on the beekeeping ordinance and the facade improvement program. On the next slide, please. Now, some key opportunities that we're looking at. We're going to expand the staff for the rental program with the housing inspector, providing dedicated capacity for inspectors, compliance, and long-term program supports. The housing fellow support through 2026, providing short-term staffing that advances key housing policy work and eases workload on permanent staff. We have the citywide user fee study, which may identify new or adjusted revenue sources and align fees with true service costs, and a potential in-house plan check capacity, allowing the city to complete more complex reviews internally and retain more plan check revenue through a phased, scalable staffing approach. And our next slide, please, the challenges. Well, we do have some challenges that we're looking at. It's continually being difficult to recruit building inspector for the building inspector position because of regional competition and limited qualified applicants. Also, significant staff time is being needed to implement new rental inspection software and update policies. We're also limiting advancement opportunities for planning staff, requiring elevation of new classification structures to support retention and growth. And then we have major multi-year funding needs for the general plan, specific plan, and zoning ordinance updates estimated for 2029 and beyond. And then we also have the economic development progress that remains limited due to the lack of dedicated staff. Now I'll turn this over to Dave.
Thank you, Keith. So next slide, please. And now we're getting into our expenditures and all of our administrative costs. As you can see, I'll just go right to the bottom. Our expenditures are totaling about 3.5 million, 3.6 million. The majority, again, is personnel costs. In terms of our professional services and admin, we've got our capital outlay at $2,000. Our materials and supplies is $3,800. Our travel training budget at $38,000. Our office expenses at $27,700. And also our grant and our third party contract, our professional services, we contract out a lot for our plan checks, and this is for our whole department. This is for all of our divisions within our department. These costs also reflect our grant-funded programs and our regulatory mandates that we need, and the staffing required to meet state housing, building, and climate compliance obligations. Next slide, please. This slide highlights our general fund activity across the professional services and office expenses and our training and publications. through expenses from 23-24 through 26-27. Basically, fiscal year 26-27 and our preliminary budgets total $199,109, with major cost drivers including our professional services, our administrative expenses and office expenses, as well as training and dues representing our smaller but essential allocations supporting staff certifications and compliance. And as you can see, we're adopted budget for 25-6. It is a kind of a reduction for what we did last year. Next slide, please. This slide summarizes our building and planning division's expenditures. So we basically broke it up into our planning and building, which is our Fund 212, which provides our professional services, remains our largest category at $395,000. Our office expenses have risen modestly to $19,000, with our training and meeting costs totaling $27,500. The administrative expense total of $692,543 is largely tied to our grants and required compliance work that we have for this year. And of course, the total preliminary FY 26-27 expenditures for all of these categories is $1.1,139,554. So next slide, please. So, and this is our general fund total budget summary. For our our code enforcement comes out of the general fund, and our economic development comes out of the general fund, and those categories. It shows our revenues at $131,520, with our expenditures of $599,815. That nets us out a net operating budget of minus $469,000. These costs reflect our general fund contribution necessary to support code enforcement, economic development, and certain administrative functions not covered by cost recovery. Next slide, please. So this just shows our total department budget summary, which shows the combined building and planning fund and general fund picture. For our 26-27 building and planning revenues are going to look like we're estimating at $3.12 million, with a general plan fund subsidy of approximately $630,000. Our total revenues of $3.75 million, and total expenditures of $2.9 million, which leaves a net operating result of plus $747,340. This reflects a strong cost recovery in building and planning, robust grant activity, and a positive overall fiscal position when combining all of our funds all together. So with that, that ends our presentation. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Any council members with questions? Okay. I think the only question is the revenues. It's showing that we're plus in this department, which is fantastic. Thank you. Or not. See, okay, maybe not. Maybe we could explain what that looks like.
A lot of that is to our grant revenue that we've received over the past year, and the carryover into the following years, as well as we're collecting more fees internally for building and for planning, more cost recovery. So that's why we're seeing more of an increase in our revenue.
Okay. Director Guillory?
Yes, if I may just add a little to that. So the fund also includes the regular operating costs that are not covered by grants. So it's in one fund, which is why you still see a general fund subsidy, because otherwise it appears that they wouldn't need the fund wouldn't need a general fund subsidy, but there are a portion of operations that aren't covered by those grants that they'll be receiving. So it appears to be a surplus, which you should probably only see for 1 year. $747,000. It looks like a surplus, but that again is just attributable to the grants and the expenditures that are offset by those grants. There's another portion that is not, which is covered by the general fund subsidy.
So there's still the 630 transfer in.
Yes.
Okay. So if you subtract the 747, the 630, there's still some positive number there, but that's a one-time.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. That was the only question I had about that. City Manager?
Thank you very much. I want to move now to usually the fun department, if you will, community services. Well, finance is always fun too.
Good evening, Council, City staff. My name is Andrea Dwyer, Community Services Director. We'll wait for the presentation. Okay. The mission of the Community Services Department is to enrich the lives of the diverse Pinole community by providing high-quality recreation and quality of life programs for residents of all ages. Just to name a few accomplishments that we've had this past fiscal year, maintaining many of our parks, we've done upkeep and enhancements to our parks and facilities, including the swim center, the youth center, the senior center. We have strengthened staffing and operational efficiency, expanded partnerships to really look for those that were interested in enhancing community events and programs through donations, whether monetary or in kind. We are increasing community awareness through marketing efforts, both social media, on our website, and then also through our newsletter that we do with our senior center. We are also just making sure to review our cost recovery. So we were able to come to City Council and approve a new master fee schedule, which will also help us review cost recovery for programs and services. Our staffing levels for this year remain consistent with that of next year. So we have about 13 equivalent full-time staff. We also have increased programs, services, and events, and we're able to still stay at those staffing numbers. Our goals as we continue moving forward for this coming year include applying those new rates to our programs and making sure that they are continuing to cover our costs, reviewing those programs that are no longer being fulfilled. So whether they are programs that have no registrations, then we'll remove those and replace those, survey the community, see what they're interested in, making sure we have events that people want to attend and be a part of, looking to enhance our customer service experience by making sure that online registration for programs and services as well as booking of facility rentals is easy and seamless, because that'll really deter people from wanting to utilize your space. So reviewing those, we'll also take a look at creating a new activity guide to deliver to our residents, which will have all of our community services, events and programs and information that proves to be really successful for program enhancements with registration, as well as coordinating new programs and offerings at school sites. So our vision this coming year, is to really get some contracted programs and services at our schools to be able to recoup or generate some additional revenue. Some anticipated opportunities include our collaboration with the Pinole Seals through our aquatics program. We're entering now into our season with the Pinole Seal, so making sure that we are offering plenty of swim lessons that are popular to our community, looking to enhance our sponsorships and community partnerships, reviewing our marketing and digital engagement improvements, our fee study implementation, and ideally just being able to also increase revenue, whether it's through programs, rentals, services. Revenue is really our focus, and making sure that the community is utilizing our services. Some of our challenges have been just balancing that cost recovery with affordability. We don't want to price out people with our programs. Staffing, recruitment, and retention, facility needs. The facilities are older, and so some of them are just in need of a lot more maintenance nowadays, so working with Public Works to get those done. Competition from other providers. Many of our local agencies are doing a great job offering programs and services, so we need to do better. And then increasing operational costs as it relates to staffing. That is really one of our biggest increase of our costs. And then also community expectations change, so we need to make sure to stay in touch with our community and see what they want and be flexible with what we're offering. As we review our budget summary, similar to other departments, the top we're looking at capital outlay at around $20,000. That is furniture that we do have to replace at some of our sites, including our swim center. The administrative expenses for $122,000 highlighted. Those are our special events. I do want to note that account we decreased. We saved about $50,000 from last year in just reviewing really where our costs were spent, how we could save, and how we could move forward with decreasing that. Taking a look at our professional services for $360,000. Our professional services really have to do with maintenance of our building structure and equipment maintenance. So whether it's our HVAC, whether it's our Terminex contracts, our pest control, whether it's appliances at the senior center that we use to support our lunch program, those are the costs that are a part of that. And then you'll see third-party contracts. Those contracts for around $150,000 are related to our instructor services. So for instance, we are a revenue-generating department where we offer our Zumba program, but we contract with, because we don't have in-house Zumba instructors, we contract to offer that service. Therefore, we generate revenue, but we have to pay them. So we're on a contract split, whether it's a 50-50, we need the 50% of those dollars to pay them through that contract. So those are for soccer classes and camps during the summertime. We have several contracts, and we are increasing as we did previously. And then you'll see $175,000 for interdepartmental charges, things that legal, insurance, as well as IT. And then utilities, $130,000, which is our electricity, water, et cetera, and personnel costs, which salaries and benefits, which are listed for a total of about 2.4 for community services. These are from the general fund, so community services oversees the contracts for animal services as well as the library, both done through the county. So $245,000 is our animal services contract, what they're projecting for next year, and then the library has submitted a tentative agreement for $200,000. Now they will only charge for actual costs, and so we do expect a savings for the first 6 months since it will be closed. We have verified that with the county. And then the $2,000, although small, it's the restrooms that we do pay for the farmers market. So just making sure to highlight what that is. And then this is our recreation fund specifically, so it's separate from the general fund pieces. Again, looking at our professional services, office expenses, our travel training. This also includes for travel training. The training piece is really more so what it is. It's also making sure that all of our staff are CPR, AED, and certified. So that does come at a cost for those that can't be covered through our human resources department. And then publications, which includes our newsletters, and then administrative expenses, which is there for $122,000 for a total of $511,000 for community services. So for our total budget summary revenues, we are anticipating just shy of $600,000. Our goal is to obviously get there, with a transfer in of 1.8, and then revenues equaling 2.4, and then expenditures also at the 2.4, similar to how the previous department had that transfer in. Any questions?
Okay, questions from council. Councilmember Martinez-Rubin, please.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to ask you some specific questions, and then I'll have questions for all the departments to think about similarly. So for now, with the listing of different services and activities that the Community Services Department offers, which would you say yield the highest percentage in terms of revenue? You have different types of activities. You have facilities rental, and then you have programming. And there are two different types of services. You need X number of individuals to register for programs of a certain type versus X number of individuals or parties to rent the facilities. So they're really not same level of fee per activity / service. But have you done that kind of review as to how many of each type of unit of service is needed to yield, to break even, let's say, to break even? I'm thinking in terms of small business operations, because we know that this is one of those departments that continually is subsidized to the general fund. So to be able to answer the question, which of these services / activities in community services yield or pay for themselves. I'm not even sure if that's the right terminology, because I know that we did the cost, you did the cost, the fee study towards that. And then the other is that we don't monetize everything. For example, the events are for a different purpose. The presumption there is that they will yield potential or prospective members of a certain type of program, or possibly identify individuals who would rent facilities, for example. So back to your review of what you have available to offer and the opportunities that are listed here, and where you see really the effort of staff going to try to survive as a department.
So because we offer so many programs and services, events for free, something that I do want to mention is we operate 13 parks and 7 facilities, and within our master fee schedule, that update that we just provided, it did do a really good job at having a cost analysis done of separating our senior services to our facility rentals. And you're absolutely right. Those free services such as events don't bring anything, but then the hope is that they'll see our wonderful parks and maybe want to book a birthday. Our facility rentals came back as being the most cost effective. It does require minimal staff. It is a dollar amount that doesn't require as much needed as the revenue that we generated, along with our contract classes. So this year in our budgeting and the behind the scenes, we've done a little bit of a budgeting exercise where we're going to be able to separate that a little bit better, because previously, about 2 years ago, prior to my arrival, we had them within other departments. So for example, our Zumba for right now is looking as though it's revenue within our senior center. We need to separate that out to show that that's a contracted class, because that is going to show a better cost recovery for those programs and services. So this year, we spent a lot of time with our finance team to delineate those services so we can see those recoveries as well. We have done that, and that's part of the cost recovery model that we're going to put forward for every program, but it is very different for our Tiny Tots program than it is for our senior center, than it is for our aquatics programs. So we're actively doing that as we continue programs throughout the department. Facility rentals produced the best, and then the youth programs produce slightly lesser of a result.
Okay. You, on one of your slides, you indicated there are high impact programs. Which are those high impact programs? Which I take to mean, and please tell me if it's otherwise, that those are the more popular?
Yes.
Yes. Which programs are those?
So our aquatics programs, the ones that are like our parent and taught programs, they really toddler-esque swim lessons, as well as our new programs that we're bringing in for our contract classes for the younger kids. Our summer camps, we've hit maximum capacity in our summer camps this past year, which had not been done for quite a while. So what we did as staff was say we could house more people for capacity-wise. We also had the staff to make it work, and it was cost effective, so we were able to even increase that. So really just making sure that those programs either offer a secondary, so if soccer is so well attended, for instance, we have a wait list right now of 4 people on a 15-person generated program. That's wonderful for our team. We need to look at offering a secondary class to see if we can gain more registration. So looking at those very high impact ones, and then if they are so saturated, can we offer this again? Can we offer really meeting the parents where they're at and seeing if we can expand registration?
Thank you. In your planning of innovative programs or enhancement, you probably have come across, as I have, the younger parents who have the child who is not quite the candidate for preschool, and not quite the youngster that is going to register into school, so whatever that age is. And parents that talk about not knowing or not having, quote, enough activities. So what can we anticipate, if at all, for that segment of the parent market, if you will, that is available to them or will be available to them?
So we're looking at ages 2 and under, because we do have a 3 and 4-year-old Tiny Tots program. So that's really where it's nice in our spring and our summer, because the swim lessons will take part in that, as well as our contracted classes. So thank you for bringing this up. Part of looking at what we're doing next year is utilizing underutilizing rethinking how we use underutilized facilities. So Tiny Tots, for example, we have program in there until about 11, 12. So then we ask the question, well, what are we doing in the afternoon? There's still people that get out of school. This is an empty building. We need to utilize this. Well, just in the last 4 months, we were able to offer family yoga in that space, which filled and had kids in there and parents in there, but that was a revenue generator for us. And so opening up those contract classes that actually doesn't require additional staffing because it's a contract. And so the city's bringing it in, we maintain staffing and filling the center with programs, people, and services. And so we were able to do that successfully, and we plan to continue to do that. Our senior center closes at 4 o'clock, so we're looking for programs from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock until Zumba starts at 6. We have a good hour and a half to 2 hours to be able to offer things, and we're looking for classes and people, whether it's art programs that we can fill in our classrooms or if it's pottery things. So really looking at those and surveying the community to see what they're interested in, and then looking for instructors to offer those services.
Well, thank you for looking at that. I know that I see your staff on holidays, spending their time here in the city as well as after hours to help to accommodate and to make available the programming. I hope that you have, in our small ways, that to complement what already is done by the communications, our communications director. Please let us know, because there is continued, interestingly, although there has been an increasing number of ways and channels, communication channels that about programming and other things that come out of City Hall, we have the incoming new families who still rely on word of mouth or have not yet registered, believe it or not, for the city manager's bi-weekly report and or directly receive the pulse. I was going to say the impulse, the pulse. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I had just one question. I know that, and this kind of touched on a little bit of what Councilmember Martinez-Rubin was saying. How much of the census data do we look at to kind of project, the 2-year-olds that are going to be 5-year-olds and are planning along with that? I feel the same kind of wave of younger families coming in. We were stuck in that 3, 4, 5 range for your kids, young enough to do one thing, but not old enough to do another. How are you kind of projecting that out? And do you use that data when you start the programming process?
We see the most of, yes, we use that data, especially when we're doing our surveys. So we offer the Rec and Roll in addition to the Pulse. So the Rec and Roll is just the e-newsletter that we do for recreation specifically. We also have been putting programs within our newsletter because sometimes in the senior center, those grandparents would love to take their grandkids. So it's been really helpful to do that as well. We really would also like to do an activity guide this coming year to be able to offer those to the families as well. To your point, it's the events that we see those younger families at. Our master plan did touch on our ages and demographics, and so we did look at that. The biggest feedback for us right now are our surveys that we're using, because those are the people that are actually reviewing our newsletters and services and telling us what they want. And then we also at events go out and talk to the people that are there, and they're very vocal. We have a recreation table at every event to make sure that we are receiving that feedback. And then we actively see people requesting painting class for kids or baking classes, and so we specifically look for those people who could offer those services.
Great. Okay. And then the only other question I had was, how are we incorporating youth, like the temporary employees or intern programs? I know there's a lot of high schoolers that help out in these programs. How is it rated?
So our part-time staff, we open it up at 16 and above, so anybody can apply. And then we have many high school students that are working for us now after they finish school. They walk on down. It's great. So really just making sure to be flexible with them while they still attend school, do their extracurriculars, and then work for us. During the summer, we see a large influx, but we have them primarily throughout the year for our evening classes. Now that we've been able to add evening classes, we're seeing more people after the high school. So it's increased our participation with our high schools around. And we also send that information for hiring and job fairs, and we go to the colleges nearby and the high schools just to make sure they have our information as well.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing no questions, City Manager.
Thank you very much. All right, next up, we have the Fund Department Finance.
I should mention, we are on 9 out of 12, so we're 75% there. Thank you, everybody, for being patient.
Wait for, okay, there we go. So the finance department is responsible for the overall financial management of the city. The department's core function is to secure the financial position by providing the city council, city management staff, and the public with financial information necessary to ensure sound financial decisions and to ensure appropriate procedures to protect the city's financial assets. This is accomplished through the timely and effective preparation of the annual comprehensive financial report, the annual budget, and quarterly financial and investment reports to ensure adequate financial controls. The finance department is also an internal service department, meaning that our primary customers are other city departments, although we also serve the public directly, especially through business license administration. So some of our accomplishments for the current fiscal year is for our last annual comprehensive financial report for the year ended June 30, 2025. We did receive an unmodified or clean audit opinion, and we continue to receive those annually. We also received the Operating Budget Excellence Award from the California Society of Municipal Finance Officers, as well as the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. That was for our annual comprehensive financial report, and that was awarded by the Government Finance Officers Association. And so that it's built into our process to submit both our budget and ACFR to both agencies on an annual basis, and we've continued to receive those awards on behalf of the city consecutively for a number of years. The finance department also worked to develop a public financial transparency dashboard that is available on the city's website, and we'll continue to update that. So our goals going forward for the upcoming fiscal year includes a number of items here. One is to automate our accounts payable function, just to make that more efficient and to reduce the number of paper invoices that we handle. We do have the opportunity to be able to do that through our current enterprise resource planning system, our financial system. And so we're working to implement that across the city. We continue to modernize our systems using our current ERP to cut down on the time that it takes to complete some of the functions. And so we're really working with a focus on efficiencies in our financial functions. We'll continue to explore revenue enhancement and expenditure reduction options, working very closely as a strategic partner to the city manager and all city departments, and looking to develop long-term fiscal strategies for long-term sustainability. We'll also assist with developing measures to address forecasted budget deficits, and that will be done through fiscal planning. And then lastly, it's not included here, but I just wanted to mention that we'll continue to refine our financial transparency dashboard. So looking at the finance department staffing, it has been pretty stable over the last 5 years. The increase that you see from 3.75 to 4, which started in fiscal year 2025-26, was just due to an FTE increasing from 0.75 to 1. And that was an existing staff member that was previously shared amongst several departments. That person has now been fully assigned to the finance department. Looking at our budget summary, again, similar to all the other departments, most of our costs are in personnel. And our next largest category is professional services. And note that we have a number of items there that are standard for fiscal management. So that includes our year-end financial audit and reports. It includes our sales and property tax consulting, our comprehensive user fee study, which is a one-time cost, and then our armored car service that is also required. So most of our costs are technically non-discretionary costs. They all are related to managing the finances of the city. One here. Okay, and then our professional and admin services, as you saw on the last slide with the breakdown, the majority of that $100,000 again is for our year-end audits and consulting services. You see some fluctuation over the years with a decrease for the fiscal year 2026-27, and that's just mainly because we had a number of one-time costs in previous years. So that included a grant consultant. It included services for ballot measures such as Measure I, where the finance department takes the lead on those types of consulting services. And so where it was higher was just actually one-time costs. And then looking at our budget summary, again, no new significant costs. The growth that you see in the finance budget is typically due to just natural increases in operating expenditures. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, do we have any questions? Questions from council? Nope. You have questions?
I have questions, but I think I'm going to hold on to them because they really apply. I see you there and I want to ask you the questions, but I really want to have the responses from the different departments with your assistance or your supplement to those responses.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez Rubin. I know it is very hard not to ask those questions because I had the same feeling. I wanted to ask more about the department as a whole, but I'm glad we're kind of saving these questions. I think we have, 3 more departments to go, and then we'll get there. City Manager, please.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have Human Resources, and Stacy is coming up here right now.
I'm a fun department too. Yeah. Sometimes the fun police, but yeah. Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm Stacy Schell. I'm the Human Resources Director. Thanks. So the mission of the Human Resources Department is to support the city of Pinole by providing provide comprehensive and timely human resources and risk management services. We have the responsibility for developing, implementing innovative strategies and programs that enhance the work experience for our employees. Our objective is to attract, develop, motivate, and maintain the best qualified employees whose diversity and skills contribute to and sustain the city of Pinole as a quality organization. Okay, so some of Human Resources accomplishments over the previous or this current fiscal year. Just to highlight a few, we conducted approximately 33 recruitments, which is actually a 15% increase from previous fiscal year. We reviewed over 1,400 applications, which is actually a 70% increase from the previous fiscal year. Another accomplishment is we facilitated 6 workplace investigations. We implemented an online new employee orientation onboarding platform for our new hires. And we also hired and onboarded and trained a new human resources technician. So the Human Resources Department has maintained its staffing levels at approximately 3 FTE since 2022. For our goals this coming fiscal year, we hope to implement successor memorandums of understanding for 3 of our bargaining units and 1 of our unrepresented employee groups. We hope to develop a supervisory academy in partnership with other West Contra Costa County cities. We hope to review OPEB, or also known as other post-employment benefits, our obligations, and look for alternatives to support the city's fiscal sustainability. For our department's anticipated challenges and opportunities, so the city has identified a need for enhanced professional development for lead and frontline supervisory staff, which plays a critical role in employee engagement, performance management, compliance, and organizational culture. Discussions with neighboring West Contra Costa County cities confirm that this need is actually shared regionally. Many agencies are facing similar challenges related to limited training budgets, staff capacity, and access to public sector specific training for supervisors. To address this need in a cost-effective manner, the city of Pinole proposes partnering with neighboring cities to offer a joint supervisory academy for this next fiscal year. This collaborative program would pool resources to deliver a comprehensive supervisory training curriculum tailored to public sector supervisors while promoting peer learning and regional consistency in supervisory practices. Pinole's estimated cost share in this program would be approximately $6,000 to $8,000 for that year, based on total program cost of approximately $30,000 to $40,000. So for the Human Resources fiscal year 26-27 general fund budget, from the bottom up, at the foundation are our salaries and benefits, our utilities, and interdepartmental charges. Next layer of our cake is the third-party contracts for required or needed services within the department. And I'll go into a little bit more detail with that on my next slide. And then lastly, at the top of the diagram, there are our department's operational expenses, which I'll also go into a little bit more detail. Okay, so for this slide, our professional administrative services. So professional and technical services, the first line item there, includes third-party contracts for workplace investigations, labor negotiations, employee benefit broker, facilitation services for city manager performance evaluations annually, pre-employment backgrounds, also medical exam services for new hires, in addition to other required services. Several of these services, we have existing agreements that have built-in annual inflation rates as well with those professional services. For the department's operational expenses, office expenses includes just basic office supplies. For travel and training and meeting costs, this includes citywide training, in addition to team building services that we may support other departments in. Also, participation in a regional leadership academy that we have within Contra Costa County. And then it also supports annual conferences for the 3 staff members assigned to the Human Resources Department. Dues and publications include annual memberships for Society for Human Resources Management and other professional organizations. And then our administrative expenses include recruitment, advertising, our exams for those recruitments, costs that are associated with our interview panels, and also we have testing of applicants. Oftentimes we have to purchase testing exams from third parties when we have larger applicant pools. Employee service awards. This also includes employee engagement events. And also our employee wellness program is also included in this budget. And then for our next slide, the Human Resources Department has no revenue. So sorry, we don't have anything to offset that. But our expenditures are approximately $1 million, which has actually grown about 4.5%, basically due to inflation over the last year. And are there any questions that you have for me?
Okay, we have a question from Councilmember Toms.
Yeah, this is for your presentation, and it also applies to some of the other departments. There were some interdepartmental charges for like cable TV, for direct costs, for that program. But Human Resources does not have that. I'm just kind of wondering, and you don't have to answer now, but I'm just thinking of the next time that we meet, is to kind of figure out where is the line between charging departments for some department services versus others.
Do you want to speak to that, how that's kind of allocated?
So just to make sure I understand, the question is about the interdepartmental charges where it shows IS charges, legal charges. Is that your
Right,
question?
and I recalled that cable TV charges a department for those services, but, you know, for instance, if you're doing a recruitment for one department, you don't charge that department's budget, it's just your department. So I'm just kind of curious, what's the threshold for charging other departments and not charging some?
So they're a little bit different. So if we're looking at IS charges or information systems charges, for example, that falls under the interdepartmental category, which you probably saw in some other, those are what we call internal service charges, right? For IT services, for example, IT does not, or information technology does not generate revenue. It's an internal service department, so all the revenue that it gets comes from other city departments. So based on the IT systems in the various departments and then also staff time, all of those costs are allocated back out to other departments. That's what makes up an interdepartmental charge, right? It just stays within. PCTV is a little different. It's what we call an enterprise, and it operates almost like a business, right? It's a much smaller enterprise if we compare it to like the wastewater treatment plant, but it is considered an enterprise because it generates funding from the outside or from external sources, as well as charging the internal departments for the use of PCTV. And that's just based on usage. If a department doesn't use PCTV, it does not pay for it. Everyone uses IT as an internal service, and so everyone is allocated that charge.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Martinez-Rubin.
Yeah, somewhat related to how you and HR staff dedicate their time. I wondered of the 33 recruitments, what the breakdown was by department.
So usually it's based on staffing. So our larger departments usually do require a majority of our time for filling vacant positions. At this point right now, most recently, it's been the police department has required a majority of our time, followed by the public works department, and then probably community services somewhere after that, and then maybe community development following that.
Thank you.
Okay, City Manager, see no other questions?
Okay. See the chief coming up here, and we'll have the fun police department. We'll just start saying that for every department.
Sorry, good evening, Mayor, council members, and members of the public. I'm Melissa Clavoon, the police chief. I also have with me Commander Justin Rogers as well. So just starting off with the mission of the Pinole Police Department, the Pinole Police Department is committed to ensuring a safe community by providing exemplary law enforcement service while engaging our citizens with honor, integrity, professionalism, and respect. So there's a list of several accomplishments that we've had over the current fiscal year, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of them. Number one, we added Axon fleet cameras to all of our patrol vehicles this year, and that was for increased transparency. We also re-implemented the traffic officer special assignments, and we contracted with CORE, the Contra Costa County's coordinated outreach, referral, and engagement services for housing and connection to community resources. And that was paid through the Housing Succession Fund, but the police department collaborates very closely with CORE, and we've worked with them over this past year. Next, you'll see a slide with our staffing. This first table shows our sworn staff numbers over the past 5 years. We're at 28 sworn staff members, and that has remained consistent other than a couple of years where we had 2 additional sworn staff members. This next table shows all of our professional staff members, and we have a total of 47 and a quarter FTEs, and that has also remained consistent over the past few years, other than a couple more sworn positions in 22-23 and 23-24. So the goals for the 26-27 fiscal year, there's a number of them that you can see in this table, but one of the things we are focusing on is prioritizing grant applications and finding funding opportunities to supplement our operational budget for equipment, training, and personnel costs. We are also organizing and managing the 3 grants that were awarded to us this current fiscal year. They focus on traffic safety, marijuana impairment, and firearm safety. And then finally, we are reviewing and analyzing implementation of law enforcement technologies for efficient and effective operations. That includes data collection and analysis and crime prevention. So some of the opportunities that we've had are the grants that were already awarded to us. So the first 3 items you'll see on there were the awards we received from the Office of Traffic Safety, the Cannabis Grant, and the Burn Grant, which is the Firearm Safety Grant as well. We reapplied for the OTS grant. We requested $266,100,000 and also the cannabis grant, and we are waiting to hear results on those applications. We also leveraged some of the National Opioid Settlement Funds with a proposal to fund for a opioid detection canine and a vehicle. And as I mentioned earlier, we continue to seek additional grant opportunities. So the challenges that we have in this upcoming fiscal year, we have 2. The first is the department's fleet. We have a very aging fleet of vehicles, both primarily our patrol vehicles, but also our administration vehicles as well. We have done some exploration and would like to consider a leasing program for a portion or the full fleet. That is a scalable cost, and it depends on how many of the vehicles are leased. A full fleet could be up to $326,000 per year. The other challenge that we have is our portable radios. We have aging radios that can no longer be serviced by the manufacturer. So we have 49 portable radios in the department. To replace each radio is about $8,200. So our thought is to have a 5-year replacement plan and to replace 10 radios at a time. 10 radios would be approximately $82,000 per year, and in hopes that we would replace all the radios before they become obsolete. So you'll see our breakdown for the police department is very similar to what you've seen with other departments. So capital outlay, that's going to be equipment such as ballistic shields, rifles, computers, tablets, and docking stations for our patrol vehicles. The next item down, materials and supplies, that's primarily fuel. And then below that, travel and training, $110,000. That item includes post-mandated training for our sworn officers. It also includes non-mandated training. It also includes range rental for our firearms program and $35,000 for officer wellness. So that's all inclusive in that $110,000. Our office expenses includes that cost right now, $46,000, does include a one-time CERT supply office supplies for $20,000. That's been rolled over for the last couple of years to establish a CERT team, which we do plan to do this year now that we have a new specialist on board. The administrative expenses, those include items such as ammunition, firearms repair, crime scene processing, and field testing supplies primarily. You'll see in the green is our professional services. The first item, $229,000 of professional services, that includes things such as our applicant processing and our backgrounds cost. It also includes almost $165,000 in county fees, and those are for things such as the Child's Interview Center, the jail, the county jail fees, the crime lab fees, Family Justice Center, SART exams, and video surveillance. We also have in there vehicle and equipment maintenance, building maintenance, radio equipment, interpretation services, some fingerprinting, and a few other items within professional services. You'll see our interdepartmental charges similar to other departments. We have a big ticket item with our general liability insurance for $490,000. Our utilities are almost $100,000. But then, of course, our major cost is our personnel, which is almost $12 million. The next slide, the professional and technical services, there is a reduction in that line item going across from 2023 to 2026. Most of that reduction is due to some one-time radio encryption costs that we had this year that we will not have in the future. The increase in the office expense item is again for that one-time CERT supplies of $20,000. And then the travel, training, and meeting costs, as I mentioned before, that's broken down with some post-mandated training for our sworn officers and non-mandated training, officer wellness, and range fees. Dues, publications, and advertising, I mentioned, and then the administrative expenses, which again is primarily things such as ammunition, firearms repair, and some crime scene processing equipment. And then finally, our total revenue is about $1.9 million, comes from our grants that we have been awarded. Total expenditures is just under $13 million. And I'm available for any questions.
Okay, we have a question from Councilmember Toms, followed by Councilmember Martinez-Rubin.
Okay, thank you for the report. Just a question on the radio replacements. Are those the Motorola units that
Yeah.
you're working on with, and they go through eBricks for the replacements?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Just to add a little bit of levity, well, not just to, but maybe a little levity in such serious programs and work that you do. Milo, is he considered an FTE, or where is his funding coming from?
Milo is supporting our FTEs as a therapy canine, yes. But Milo does have a budget, because we do have a canine budget, because the department does pay for not only the training but also the food and veterinary costs as well.
So his expenses are throughout different categories in the budget then?
Yes, they fall under. Yeah, there is one line item that we have for Milo, but it will also include our second canine that we are ongoing canine costs for the opioid detection canine as well. And that is, I can get back to you with exactly which line item that is. But we have about $20,000 budgeted for the canine program.
That is minus the grant that you are going to that you expect to receive, or
Correct.
for which you have applied.
So with the canine, that is the opioid settlement fund. So those are one-time funds that we will use to purchase the canine and the initial training of the canine, and also the vehicle that is used to transport the canine. The ongoing costs include the food, the veterinary bills, and ongoing training after those one-time fees are used.
Right. Thank you. Okay, thank you. That gives us an idea of what $20,000 can provide. Thank you so much.
Okay, the only question I had was with the fleet, and I'm glad you guys are exploring the lease model. I was just wondering what the annual maintenance costs were for the fleet, and I know that that's just a snapshot, and really you have, varying costs across the different vehicles, but what is that typically line item? Because I see this lease thing is fixing that cost over a 5-year period.
So we have a vehicle and equipment maintenance budget right now of $72,000. So with the leasing program, it will depend how many vehicles are leased. Technically, a leased vehicle includes the maintenance. So if we lease 50% of our fleet, then we still have to provide maintenance for the other 50% that's not included in the lease.
Right, so we could see that 72 dropping 36. It's about $100K per car, right? So I'm just trying to figure out how to phase in that leasing, or do we make the investment to remove that 72,000 over a 5-year period, which works out to be about $350,000 if we were to keep it there.
We would have to, I think we would have to factor that in depending on we're currently looking at a 5-year leasing program.
Right.
And again, it does depend on how many vehicles we are leasing. That 72,000, we are consistently going over that cost currently, just in the maintenance of our vehicles because of their aging fleet.
I know there's more to come with the calculations, but I think that this might be an opportunity for us, because you could also do a buyback, right, at the 3-year mark, recover some of the costs that you've already put in, and then reinvest that into another lease. But I'm sure that's more to come on that. But no, I'm glad to see that the option's being considered.
Great.
City Manager?
And to that point, part of the analysis would be brought to the Finance Subcommittee, laying out current costs over the 5-year projection plus then the other programs, so the Finance Subcommittee could weigh in before bringing forward the whole council.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Doesn't seem like there's any other questions. City Manager?
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. The last one is Public Works, and I will be walking through this one.
I am available, Garrett, if you'd like.
No, I've got it. But if there are questions, I think Heba will be available for questions, because she certainly knows this inside and out. But I'll walk through this. Okay, so Public Works. The department is responsible for building, operating, and maintaining the city's infrastructure, facilities, and utilities related services to support everyday life and safety. Next slide, please. So as you can see on the accomplishments, similar to what we saw with the police department, there's a whole host of accomplishments here. I'll highlight some of them. The Department of Public Works is focusing on additional maintenance activities, dividing the city into 5 zones for repairs, trying to increase, working on sign replacement, potholes, streetlight pavement markings, et cetera. They've developed a pavement rehabilitation plan for the 25-26 fiscal year and anticipate that being posted on April 9th. They've also reactivated a lot of the larger scale projects for the community, such as San Pablo Avenue Bridge, the Tennant Avenue Bay Trail Gap Closure Railroad Crossing, and the Crossing Safety Project on San Pablo Avenue and Pinole Valley Road. Another accomplishment is developing sewer lateral replacement program, and the active transportation plan will be coming soon before the council. Additional accomplishments include, and you've heard them working in tandem with community services. There's been replacements to HVAC units at the youth center, working on roofs at the senior center and PD building, upgrading the swim center, upgrading soccer fields, replacing some stormwater and sewer projects on Dolores Court, Pinion Orleans sewer lines, and Fernandez Park sewer lateral, as well as another agenda item, which was the replacement of the first blower at the treatment plant and obviously the continuing work for the next 2 blowers at the facility. And then always good to see 21 new ADA compliant curb ramps were installed from throughout the community. When you go to the next slide and look at the staffing, although the staffing's been relatively stable, I do want to appreciate HR and the Public Works Department. They've been working very closely the last several weeks trying to fill the Capital Improvement Program Manager, as well as a couple other positions within the engineering realm. That is sort of the bottleneck that at least I've heard since I've been here for a couple of weeks. You know, how are the street programs going? How is the infrastructure? How can we move it? And I've heard that from the council, heard it from the community, and those positions will help move those along when we can bring those folks on board. And I know the questions for the panel were finalized today or yesterday, and that's moving along for the CIP manager. Other types of goals that you see on the next slide, and what I've been talking with the director about is, and not trying to make a million subcommittees here, but I really would like to recommend to the council for consideration at a future agenda item, a creation of an infrastructure and transportation subcommittee, something that meets monthly. The council and the community can hear updates monthly on all the programs and projects, no matter what state or they are in. So that way, it is a way to make sure everyone's aware of what's going on. It really does help focus the efforts and make sure that we're accomplishing things in a very transparent manner. So that will be soon to be coming to a discussion when I work with the city attorney on the correct process to do that for a standing committee. Other anticipated opportunities as we go to the next slide. Certainly, as you heard, the police department does a great job, so does Public Works and Capital Improvements, going after grant funding, looking, as well as they're looking at working with smart city technologies. I know Contra Costa Transportation, CCTA has a very active, robust smart city technology program, and if there's a way to collaborate with that along San Pablo Avenue and a few other areas, I think that's a great opportunity. Looking at challenges beyond the opportunities, as mentioned, keeping the staffing levels up so that way the projects can move is always key. Also, you know, as I mentioned, hearing about the roads condition, playground equipment, those facilities, making sure the capital improvement program that goes before the council is prioritized in the way that meets the needs of the council and the community. And one of the challenges I've also seen is, in some ways, you know, I want to look at the budget where there might be an opportunity even for something simple like a thermoplastic equipment. Very small, cost-effective. You need some training for the public works folks, but maybe you can then do certain crosswalk improvements, you know, striping, certain street, very minimal areas. You're not replacing or doing a large scale because that you need professional contractors to do. But there's a few times where you can just do a few touch-up items and it helps the community in certain areas to quickly respond if there's some striping or other needs. Also want to add, just in a larger context, and I know we have talked about the $4 million challenge we have, but also want to work with the council and see if there's a way, how can we leverage and get another $1 million into infrastructure and transportation issues. Because there is a laundry list, a long list of improvements, and how can we work together to prioritize that and make sure that is moving forward. And it'll be a big goal, but I think, you know, there's ways we can get there. And again, that's part of when we work with the council here on the budget challenges, you know, prioritizing what needs to be done in this community. So people see, whether it's the two Measure S's or the Measure I dollars, they know that's what's going to, try and address a lot of those challenges. On the next slide, when we get into the budget summary, you'll see there's almost 1.4 million going into capital outlay and improvements, which is a sizable number, but quickly can be absorbed rather quickly. There's also third-party contracts and equipment maintenance that sort of is in that professional and technical services. That's about 422,000. And then you have the staffing number, which is at about 2.7 less the interdepartmental charges. But certainly utilities are also a big number there. So whenever energy efficiency can be looked at and reduce that $150,000 a year, it would be something that we certainly will do. Going into the professional administrative services, again, as a year-over-year comparison, the number has certainly gone down when compared to 23-24 and 25-26. That is something that I will talk with the director to better understand and make sure, hopefully those are cost savings and not deferring projects or smaller contracts. And if they are, we will look at, again, how do we bring those on if that's needed, maintenance or repairs, to keep that active. And then finally, on the last slide, looking at the overall budget, the revenues are approximately $400,000 a year over the last several years, with a higher expenditure number. Certainly great to see at least a third of that going for capital improvement projects, but always the goal of seeing how to get that a higher number than just staffing. Happy to take questions, and I know we have some help on the Zoom, I guess it would be, if you have any specific questions as well.
Okay, do we have any questions?
If I may add to the last slide, the revenue that is shown here is only the revenue from the permits. We are receiving multi-million-dollar in grant funds, and I will be showing that as part of the CIP budget. It's not shown as part of the operating budget.
Okay. Thank you, Director. Thank you, City Manager. Okay, we're going to take questions from Council. Councilmember Toms, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the report. Just wondering what the status is of bringing on a project manager?
We have interviews set up on April 2nd for the CIP manager. As you know, this recruitment has been ongoing for over a year, but we have good candidates currently, and we're hoping to be able to fill this position. We also have interviews set up for the associate engineer position on April 7th, and we're hoping to be able to fill that key position as well. With the use of some salary savings, we were able to publish these two positions earlier this year in professional publications such as APWA and LinkedIn and so forth. So we have a good pool of candidates currently, and we're hopeful to be able to fill the positions.
Okay, that's really great news. Thank you.
Councilmember Martinez-Rubin.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. Some of these questions I think apply directly to Public Works and are probably across the board. We haven't specifically seen the capital improvement plan just yet, but in the on one of the slides where it reads capital outlay improvements, that 1.3 million, is that minus improvements as needed at the waste water treatment plant?
I'll be happy to give you the breakdown of the 1.3 million. The spending on buildings improvements added to about 425,000, on parks about 105,000, on sidewalks and streets to about 590,000, and on storm drains, about 270,000.
Okay, so I didn't hear wastewater treatment plant, so that's apart from this 1.4. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The treatment plant is funded by enterprise funds, and it's divided between the city of Hercules and the city of Pinole. So this number does not reflect that.
Thank you for confirming that. Now, again, we're not seeing the CIP, but would you say what at this point in the budget preparation, what percentage of the CIP's projects for 26-27 would you say are fully funded for the projects you expect to complete in 26-27?
I will provide details as part of the project charters on the individual projects, but we've been successful in applying for and being awarded a number of grant funds, and we recently applied for additional ones, STMP and the federal state partnership funding program, OTS grant for safety education, and as well as software investments. We've been very aggressive in pursuing grant funds. We already secured additional funds. For example, we secured Highway Bridge Program funding, additional funding for the San Pablo Avenue Bridge replacement. So the vast majority of the capital improvement projects are grant funded, and I will be happy to go through the details of the individual projects as part of the CIP presentation.
Thank you. With that in mind, that the majority of projects in the CIP are grant funded, this is a question to you as Director of Public Works, but also I think overall to the city manager. Is the city relying on one-time fixes, if you will, one-time funds such as grants more than we ought to be? And I know that's a very broad question. It's wonderful to anticipate and to think of, and we know that public comment time and time again calls for the use of grants, but they do have limits. So if not tonight, if you could help us understand when it becomes a little, that we're leaning a little too much on that, and then the flips on grants, one-time sources and funding sources, and then the flip side of that is, I have a general idea of an answer to my own question, but the flip side of relying on grants would require us to do what in order to not have that reliance?
Relying on grants has been effective for the city in pursuing large-scale projects. For example, the Tenant Avenue Bay Trail gap closure, the highway safety improvements that will soon be implemented on San Pablo Avenue and Pinole Valley Road, the San Pablo Avenue Bridge, various large-scale projects that we wouldn't otherwise be able to fund. With that being said, as part of the establishment of the 5-year CIP that I started developing last year and I updated this year, I added a number of projects for general upgrades, for street lighting, signals, signing and striping. Those are annual programs that are funded mainly by measure funds, as well as by development impact fees. So those will be consistent annually. And subject to the funding opportunities as part of the vehicle impact fees could assist us in pursuing additional road projects, for example. With that being said, the project that will be posted on April 9th for the pavement rehabilitation projects, That's slightly over $3 million. And Wildan Consultant has been helping me in developing the standard plans and specifications. And the packet was almost ready to be posted. That's mostly funded by SB1 funds that accumulated over the past years. And we have allotment annually of SB1 funds, so we will be able to supplement it as we progress over the years. And I'm planning to pursue state SHOP funds, for example, for pavement improvements the next round. Caltrans funded another city for improvements on San Pablo Avenue, and I'm planning to apply for continuations through the city of Pinole. So grant funding, although they are one-time funds, they are a very good source for pursuing larger scale projects.
Thank you for that explanation. So there are most definitely reasonable, practical, and timely reasons for applying to grants. So perhaps what's still on my mind, and perhaps a broader question is the city relying on one-time funding sources to cover ongoing costs a little too much? And what would be financially acceptable?
And certainly I always defer to the engineers in the room when it comes to explaining this. Sorry, I'm used to a mic being on the wall. Generally speaking, the ongoing revenues that you utilize are more for the neighborhood streets, if you will, and the arterials. The really impact is where you go after the grants to cover the real big expenditures, and try and balance the two of those is usually what cities try and do.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay. A question that kind of generated for me is and just me having that kind of civil background and talk to the interim city manager about this. There's a gap, the arterials that you talked about, but those smaller streets, there's no associate engineer, there's no capital projects manager. But I think that in here we have another layer of, so that middle layer of the work that I think Councilmember Martinez Rubin is talking about has been vacant for quite some time. And I think that to Councilmember Tom's point, that's huge to fill that middle gap because it allows us to scale. Right now, to Councilmember Martinez Rubin's point, I think we're relying on grants heavily. And we've been in this situation for quite some time. When they come through, it's great. And I know that that would be more of the director role, chasing that kind of work and getting that in the queue. But that's been, since I've been on council, that's pretty much been our mode of operation. So it's great to hear that middle band is being filled. I'm anxious to hear more about in the CFIP or the CIP, where we hear more from the team as how that band will be used moving forward. So so I would just ask that as you guys are developing the budget and coming back, that we'd see a little bit more of that middle work. And then ideally when the grants hit, then you'll see a surge in work there. So, okay. Councilmember Martinez.
If I may, just to add a little twist to this, another question then.
Question. That's awesome.
Thank you. Is the city investing enough in preventive maintenance? And that's, again, a very broad question, and it goes to Public Works and other departments, because I think there are probably some projects in other departments as well that require maintenance, prevention. I think IT for certain is one of those. Yeah. And if not, then let us hear that, because we need to understand. I think the public also needs to understand why we're working toward a big ask of them come November. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, if I may respond to this question, in addition to the regular maintenance activities, As you know, we divided up the city into 5 zones over the 5-year period. And we're currently completing the signs replacement within Zone 1. And within the next couple of weeks, we will be performing the potholing work within Zone 1. All of this is proactive type work before conditions deteriorate even further. We've tested all of the street lighting. We're not installing additional lights due to the limited funding. This is being pursued under a separate capital improvement project. But we tested all of the lighting and we replaced all damaged luminaires. We're also improving signing and striping plans. As our interim city manager mentioned, one of the items that we will be pursuing in this fiscal year is the purchase of equipments. This will come before you, either the second meeting in April or the first meeting in May. We're presently pursuing various quotes from different suppliers to replace 2 of the patrol vehicles for the department, for the police department, as well as purchase a flat truck for pavement markings, as well as additional equipments for maintaining the soccer fields and other parks that would save significantly on the manpower used in such activities, so that we can utilize the technical expertise of our staff in performing other maintenance efforts that would be preventative. So we are taking this approach and we're tackling the city zone by zone.
Okay, thank you, Director. Okay, so I know that there was a last slide for interim city manager, the preliminary long-term financial forecast recap.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Now that we've walked through the various departments, I would like to bring the budget back to a 35,000-foot level, if you will. When you look at the overall budget, long-term financial forecast that was shown earlier, there was an approximately $4 million structural deficit. To create a balanced budget plan, I would like to work with the council in whatever form the council feels appropriate, if that's an ad hoc subcommittee or otherwise, to develop what I will call, and we'll just use here, a yellow brick road plan that identifies cuts or revenues to ensure a balanced budget. Now, this is the numbers in the lowercase here, and you know, I'm showing my age because I certainly can't see it that far away, but is just an example. What you do is you take a look and lay out yellow blocks, and that's whenever you show an a deficit, you know you have to fill it in 1, 2, or 3 years, generally is what you're trying to do. And minimize any one-time funds that you would use from a reserve, or in the case of the 115 trust, however you're doing that. And working with the correct subcommittee, develop that plan that identifies those projects to ultimately bring to the council by June. And, you know, in just the example that I showed here, you know, it could be a $2 million cuts for next year. The following year, and those $2 million, they stay cut. They don't backfill, you don't fill it back in. Then the next year it could be $1.25 million. And in certain cases, already looking at the budget, I see where there's potential for those numbers already to be reached. Now, you know, and there are certain elements that, or elements of concern that we need to work together on. One glaring one in here is going to be working with the county on the fire contract. It is growing right now at 8%. That is basically that will double in 10 years. In 10 years, that would pretty much consume every single dollar of property tax generated for this city, plus almost all of Measure S, and Measure I. that's not sustainable for this community. So, we'll work with the council or the subcommittee as appropriate, identify these areas of opportunity, whether that's meeting with the county or looking at other types of ways to address this, and have a plan that works and fills in the yellow boxes every year to make sure that it's balanced. So that's all I just wanted to add. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're now on to public comment. I want to thank the public in the audience and online for getting through this presentation. We'll take any public comment at this moment. Madam Clerk.
Raphael Menace.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, members of the public. My name is Raphael Menace, a resident of Pinole. And because this is a workshop tonight and we weren't able to get this packet before the meeting, I would like to request of the mayor time extension so I can address the several questions that I've had as during the presentation.
So I believe that's within the purview of the mayor to extend. So yeah, we'll go ahead and extend that. I know that it's a lengthy presentation, but we want to make sure that we get as much comment on record as possible during this time.
Great, thank you. So to start with, so in the city attorney's total budget summary, so I think that's on page 24 of the packet overall. It shows basically a decrease in interdepartmental charges from 292,600 to 248,180 from the 25-26 adopted budget to a 26-27 preliminary budget. Can you maybe expand on basically the difference there? It looks like professional and technical services has remained roughly even, but it seems like there's some variance there. And then I guess this is another question to the mayor. Do you want to basically have it go back and forth with the questions, or do you want me to go through all the questions and then on to the next speaker and so on?
So I'd like to get I know this is a lot and this is a workshop, but I'd like to get as many questions on record as possible. And then instead of going back and forth, because we do have other speakers, I believe. Oh, we don't. But at the same time, this could be a very lengthy meeting if we were to go back and forth.
Okay.
So let's get all of them on record, and then there'll be another opportunity to have staff answer those questions.
Right. So that was more like a process thing, just because I have a number of them and I wanted to figure out that.
Yeah, we want to give you the time to get those on record.
So next up then, on page 31, the city clerk's office total budget summary. So doing cross comparison, if we look at professional administrative services on page 30, it looks like that's essentially flat from the current year to the 26-27 preliminary budget year. But if we look at the total budget summary on page 31, we see an increase of about $110,000 in total expenditures from the 25-26 adopted budget to the 26-27 preliminary budget. And I was wondering if there could be some more detail onto the cause of that. Were there particular costs in CalPERS, benefits, that sort of thing? On page number 34 for the City Council professional and administrative services, one thing I noted was a spike of about $8,000 in cost, not just in this year, but also in the current year adopted budget for professional and technical services, subcategory 421. I was curious about that, as well as basically the split of the additional 37,000 roughly in travel costs between the various council members. On page number 44 in the city manager's segment, I note increased dues, increased administrative expenses, increased office expenses, travel costs, and professional and technical services. And while some of that is addressed in the prior page, page 43, the outlay, I'd appreciate more detail in the, I guess, consulting services costs. Is that mostly just the new city manager recruitment process? The office expenses costs was the decrease in the 25-26 just due to the acting / interim city manager, or was it due to other causes? Because I know that compared to other years, 22,000 is more equivalent compared to a 10,000 currently. Likewise for travel, training, and meeting costs, though their 10,700 is higher than prior years where we had a fully staffed city manager. So I'm curious as to the cost allocations there. I'm assuming that the relatively low cost in the current year is due to the acting / interim city manager not triggering most of those costs. Dues, publications, and advertising. Again, is that due to, even as a cross comparison, like you'll see for 24-25, it's like $765. And then in 26-27, you see $4,275 in the preliminary budget for that. I don't know whether some of that is also allocated out for the recruitment process or whether there's a bunch of new dues that have been charged in prior years. And administrative expenses, I'm assuming, is roughly the same for the prior year to date, current year to date being just relatively less due to interim and the preliminary budget being somewhat more. I'm also a little bit curious about the 24-25 charge on administrative expenses there. Moving on to page 53, the information technology FY 26-27 expenditure budget summary. Just the way that that particular page is formatted. There's basically a green box around professional and administrative services, and I'm not sure whether that's intended. That's just a formatting glitch, or it's intended to indicate some particular cost that's worth highlighting. And then for the expenditure budget summary, in a lot of other departments, there's information system charges, which I assume would ordinarily show up here as basically the flip side of that. But if we hop forward briefly to say community services expenditure budget on page 84, you'll see IS charges as 68,000, basically as a positive charge. And then in information technology, we're seeing IS charges again here as a positive charge. But when we go to page 56 and we look at total reimbursements versus total expenditures, they're canceled out. So I guess I'm wondering, is it just because this is the expenditure budget that the IS charges aren't noted differently? Is it a formatting thing? Because I know that the total expenditure budget is less than the interdepartmental charges listed on page 53. So it seems like there's something I'm missing there, whether it's formatting or the way the various numbers add up or something that's going on there. But I feel like there's something I'm missing there that could stand to be corrected. With regards to PCTV, I see, again, the same sort on page number 64, the expenditure budget summary for fiscal year 26-27. I see the same sort of green box that we saw for the Information Systems Department. I also note breakouts somewhat for basically sub-items, I think, in darker blue, and then the more complete segments in full blue. And I'm wondering whether PCTV just did that on their own initiative or they were asked to highlight that, because it's interesting seeing that department's expenses split out in that way when the other departments have it formatted differently. And it's also interesting to see that, utilities costs for PCTV are so substantial, given, I guess the nature of the broadcasting and the costs that are inherent in that, compared to like some other departments that are much bigger in terms of salaries and wages, but still have lower electricity costs on net. Let's see. And I guess again on page 65, we've got another one of those green boxes. On page 66, I know that Director Epps noted that most of the contract cancellation happened 3 to 5 years ago, but I note that revenues from external sources is noted as 209, basically 210,000 in fiscal year 23-24, and then it drops to 125,000 in 24-25, 115,000 of the adopted budget. And I know that it's noted as the adopted budget and not the year-to-date actuals, which we see sometimes in this column. And then the preliminary budget, we have 85,000. So that seems like we have an ongoing decline in external sources. That seems like it's a bit of a point of concern. I know the Revenue City Department is just because it wasn't being treated as an internal service expense prior to fiscal year 24-25. So that's what's going on there, but I think that's worth highlighting for the council's consideration. For community development, in the expenditures category for professional services, I'm noting a charge, it seems like, of about $1 million for grant/cost recovery contracts. So is that the charges we're paying to implement the grants, which are also offset by the grants? Is that the charges we're paying to the grant seeking contractor? I don't feel like I quite understand that particular line item specifically. And then community development administrative credits. I noticed there's a chunk of administrative credits. What sorts of categories fall under administrative credits for the community development department? I know that you've got insurance charges and legal charges where you see the ordinary debits, but you don't see credits as often. On page number 76, I think there's basically two separate subpoints. So one is we've got a increase overall in community development general fund revenues, and I'm assuming a lot of the shift in that from 24-25 to the 25-26 adopted budget was due to the master fee study to go along with the increase in expenditures. But then I also see an anticipated increase in revenues at about a third again in the current year's preliminary budget. and a decrease in anticipated expenditures. So I'm wondering if they could go maybe into a little bit more detail on that. Was there something else back page? And then I guess this is a broader question because that's noting the general fund total budget summary, but going back to page 75, you also have the split out building and planning professional and administrative services subsegment. And I know that on the revenue side of that, which you're not listing here because you're only listing out the general fund total budget summary. Oh wait, no, that's also the building and planning revenues on 77. So is the city actually anticipating getting contract completion revenues? Because I know that there were various court rulings that said we couldn't get certain forward-facing revenues before there were actual certificates of occupancy issued, et cetera. So is it anticipated that basically the $3 million effectively in building and planning revenues is mostly the completion triggers for those various outstanding costs the city has already incurred on itself? And I guess linked to that would it be possible also to have a third page, because it looks like, if I'm parsing this properly, and I may not be, that the general fund total budget summary is separate from the community development total budget summary, but the community development total budget summary is not including the general fund summary, but is more a subsegment looking at the building and planning fee-based supports. So would it be possible to have net operating results combining both the general fund and the building and fund budget summaries to basically cross-compare those two more directly? On page 82, increased revenue through facility rentals. Speaking as somebody who's recently rented a city facility, I'm wondering whether that particular bullet point item also includes the city considering the rules around facility rentals and the limitations in certain types of rentals that can maybe be implemented based on those rules and the variables in those rule implementation for facility rentals versus city-funded events. I would note in particular that the gazebo, as I noted in photographs I was taking of it for the deposit process, has numerous outlets in it that seem to be designed for the providing of amplified sound, even though the city bans all amplified sound in facility rentals in the parks at the present time. On page 84, one thing I'm curious about there is the property taxes listing, which we don't see for the other expenditure budget summaries. Is that because of the segments of property tax that the city owes to the other taxing agencies for the segments of land that the city owes itself, or for some other reason? And this is on page 84. And on page 86, professional and technical services, looks like there's an increase in that of about $37,000 from the current fiscal year's budget. I don't think that was directly addressed during the presentation. If it was, my apologies, but I'd appreciate follow-up on that. On page 87, I note that there appears to be a spike in program revenues in fiscal year 24-25 for the community services as a whole. And then after that, it sort of levels off to its more standard level of around 520,000, 570, 600,000. So if the state could go into more detail as to what caused that particular spike in revenues and to the extent that that's replicable or not in future years. On page 93 for the finance department, I note decreases in several of the categories, about $40,000 in professional and technical services, about $1,000 in office expenses, an increase of about $2,000 in travel, training, and meeting costs, and a decrease of about $10,000 in administrative expenses. I think some of this was detailed, but I'm curious as to the increase in travel, training, and meeting costs and the decrease in professional and technical services. And to a lesser extent, the decrease in administrative expenses. For human resources, on page 101, I've got sort of the opposite question, an increase in professional and technical services costs of about $31,000 and an increase in dues, publications, and advertising from $700 to $2,200. So again, causes for that. On page, and there might be a printing error here because I just see 10, which I think is 110, supposed to be. I notice substantial administrative credits for the police department. I was wondering if there could be maybe some more detail as to what generates those credits. Is it just police department services provided to, say, the community service department or public works, or is there some other cause to basically cause those administrative credits to be generated, basically, because we don't see those as often in the various other expenditure budget summaries. On page 115, with regards to Public Works fiscal year 25-26 accomplishments. This is maybe a bit of an overlap with one of the other pages, but the Pinole Orleans sewer lines and associated road repairs, I noticed because there was some rain today, some water gathering along some of the repair points there, so I figured that was worth highlighting. I don't know, I assume that's partially just default settlement, but if it's a longer term potential pothole issue, I figure that might be worth Public Works looking at. And with regards to more broadly ADA compliant curb ramps and public safety throughout the city, I've also noticed just today, as a matter of fact, somebody driving one of those motorized sort of senior wheelchair type things going the wrong direction down the street in part of a segment that doesn't actually have sidewalk on it between basically the edge of Robla. You know, the area that's built up has a lot of cacti where there's basically this sidewalk gap, someone just sort of driving it semi in the street to move through that area. So that's potentially an issue with that sidewalk gap I wanted to draw the city's attention to while we're on that particular segment of the budget. Then let's see. I guess with regards on page 119 to meeting communities' needs, especially with regards to road improvements given available resources, the city manager was requesting basically $1 million extra on top of the effective $4 million deficit to fund road improvements. And I'm wondering whether that will be allocated primarily to highest need road improvements, to getting through the segment of roadway that the city's working on, so region 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more quickly, to incidental challenges, to trying to deal with arterial conditions because this San Pablo Dam roads continue to deteriorate, and that's more noticeable again during the rain and dealing with skids from stops at some points where there's road decay at, say, the Appian intersection in the north-facing region and potholes developing there. Let's see. And of course, financial uncertainties. I wanted to highlight that for everybody, the effect of inflation, tariffs, and other factors on the rising costs of construction costs, including material and transportation costs and regulatory changes on the federal level. I know we don't like talking a lot about partisan changes on the federal level, but I think it's important for the council and the public to note that partisan actions taken at the federal level can have an impact on the costs that the city faces both directly and indirectly. On page 120, the budget summary, again, administrative credits of 2.15 million, basically the cause for those credits. I'm guessing a lot of that is just associated with road work and services provided to building and planning and other factors, but I feel like there's something I'm missing there, so I'd appreciate more detail on the substantial administrative credits for that segment. And then I'm also wondering whether under third-party contracts, any of that links into facilities and equipment maintenance, or whether that's entirely in-house for the Public Works Department. And finally, on the very last page, 123, I believe. Yes. The preliminary long-term financial forecast recap. That's showing basically the current plan to basically go down the 115 trust down to nil by fiscal year 2030, effectively speaking, and, you know, having the new revenues cuts to offset the increasing structural surplus deficit. But one thing I'm not quite sure that I'm following, the 2026B and the 2027F. When we're looking at the fiscal year 26-27 budget, how is that split within this report? Should we basically effectively be calculating half of the 2027F structural surplus / deficit as in the 2026B, or is 2027F the 27-28 fiscal year, so 2026B is the 26-27 fiscal year? Because when I see F, I think fiscal year, but I'm not quite sure what B implies here, if it's budget year and that includes all of the fiscal year, how all that's broken out, basically. It seems a bit unclear. And if the city wanted to have the Section 115 trust be more sustainable, what level of revenue cuts would basically be required? Like, for example, if the city only wanted to limit itself to withdrawing just $1 million per year from the Section 115 trust. So instead of just lasting until fiscal year 2030, it could last into, say, 2034. Would that mean it would need to get additional $2.2 million in the current fiscal year, and then $1 million in the next fiscal year, and $500,000 in the fiscal year after that, and then it would effectively have a credit of $500,000 in fiscal year 29-30? Because I know that was one potential thought. But looking at the preliminary long-term financial forecast, it looks like at the present time, the plan is not to do cost shifting away from the 115 trust. The plan is to continue basically the current segment 4 drawdown of the 115 trust down to zero by the end of FY 29-30. And I believe that is finally all of my questions and comments on this item. Thank you.
Mr. Menace, thank you for those questions. We'll go ahead and get those down. Thank you for putting them on record. We did go quite some time with those questions, but we'd like to get the next speaker up for public comment.
There are no more public comments.
Okay. Back to the council. Comments, questions, concerns? We'll start on this side with Councilmember Martinez-Rubin.
Thank you. Yeah, with, if you can help me understand how that preliminary long-term financial forecast was created, when Mr. Menace talked about the small b and the small f there, I'm thinking baseline and, no.
It stands for budget and forecast.
Budget and forecast, thank you. And when interim city manager, you mentioned 8% growth, that's year over year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And that 8% growth came to be, that percentage itself, these numbers here reflect whatever forecasting tool was used based on what we know today. And I'm looking back at one of the initial pages where we see that there is a projected increase even from today to next fiscal year of 5% expenditures in operations overall. I think 9% increase in pension and OPEB, 5% in professional services. Those are some of the percentages that you indicated. But where does that 8% year over year grow? I mean, that's a percentage that's calculated in the numbers that we see in the long-term forecast, but why use 8%? Why not use something different?
Excellent question. That is the data we received from the county for the increase in this past year, for projecting for next year, is the 8%. What we will do in future models, hopefully not to make the numbers too much smaller, but we can add a column of assumed growth percentage. So that way it can be identified. We can have a tab. In certain cases, CalPERS sends us projections over the next several years, which may be different than, say, health increase, which since 1960 have gone up 8.1%. But we can label all of that, and as well as even in the salary area, if there's an assumption of a 1%, 2%, or 3% growth in salaries. So it's very clear to see some of those assumptions. Great question.
May I add to that, please? So yeah, just to be clear, the 8% was related to the fire contract only. The 5% overall, that's the net of increases and decreases in flat growth in various areas. It nets out to an overall 5% increase in the general fund.
The fire contract is not quite that outlier, but it's one of the major cost drivers.
Yes.
And that's why we're using the 8%.
So we're only using it for that, for
that particular line item.
Yes, correct.
Okay, well, then that makes me wonder if we're capturing everything, because the percentages projected percentage increases in other areas, other services vary.
Yes.
But overall, they are higher than the percentage of revenues also projected.
In some, for example, in the salaries and benefits, we have a 3% increase. So it just depends on the category. But overall, it nets out to a 5% increase in the total budget from the current fiscal year to the projected fiscal year 26-27. So you have some areas where there's flat growth or lower growth. It's not at the 8%. Yes, the fire contract makes up a good portion of the professional and admin services, so it does drive that category up a bit, but there are some areas where it's not growing at that same rate.
Okay, thank you. And so those were my questions related to that last slide on the financial forecast. I think I know the answer to this, but if you can, again, confirm or otherwise, let us know, and as also review and to help public understand, are our recurring revenues projected? Will they be sufficient to cover projected recurring expenditures in the long term? Or let's just say 5 years from now? Not quite that 10-year projection. I'm always suspect of that 10-year projection, but
Again, day
Within 5 years.
17 here, but
I'm sorry, what was that? I missed it.
day 17 here,
Day 17?
there needs to be some course corrections.
Oh, your day 17, pardon me,
Yes.
I missed that.
Yes.
Okay.
I would strongly suggest some course corrections or prioritization on some of the expenditures.
Thank you. And then something that I think also will paint us or have us really look at these things and perhaps add to what you just said, interim city manager, is if we can have a visual that shows how we've been, what the trend has been in the city's use of fund balance levels over the past 5 years, because we have drawn from that. And fund balance levels have been available to us at all, at least in the past 8 years that I've been on council, because there were not major expenses. We kind of saved that and then rolled over, but we've been dipping into that. And I'd like to see that. Yeah. And for later discussion or future discussion, very broad question here about how vulnerable is our city budget to economic downturns, which is the context in which we are, or the city is operating. If next time department heads present, you can give us your perspective on whether spending patterns or projected expenditures for, at least for 26, 27, reflect what you have heard are community priorities in your respective departments. I think we've heard time and time again some of the city's major fiscal risks, but I take note of aging infrastructure as one. And what are others? And then a question is, what reserves do we have dedicated, does the city have dedicated to emergencies or disasters? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez-Rubin. Councilmember Desai.
And Mayor, these are comments as well. The
These are
council.
comments, questions. We're keeping it a little bit loose because
Sure.
it's a workshop, but
Don't have many, but I just want to say, first off, thank you to staff for working on this. Interim City Manager, you mentioned the creation of 2 ad hoc committees, one on infrastructure and transportation, the other on helping with the process of drafting the budget as it goes through the process. Just want to get clarification from you and City Attorney now. Is this something that we can make a motion on tonight, or do you recommend doing that?
You can provide direction tonight. If you wanted to create an ad hoc committee, we'd have to put that on a future agenda, but you can provide that direction and we'll put it on the future agenda for creation.
Gotcha. And to have the appointment come back to the council,
correct.
The meeting after the regular council meeting approving the establishment of that.
You could do that at the same meeting,
Meeting.
establish and make the appointments at the same meeting. We would agendize it that way.
Thank you. Now, I'm just looking forward to more conversation about this budget and how it evolves over time, the next few months here. We adopted a amendment to our reserve policy, I believe last year, right, Mayor? It's been a pattern during my time in this council. The previous councils left us with a very hefty reserve policy, 50%, well above what other localities have had. And there's been a pattern of, I think, cutting where we can and then backfilling on our reserve fund, decreasing it a few percentage points each year. Excuse me. And for this year, we're at 25%. And we don't have that same luxury this time. So just want to keep that in mind. And looking forward to more conversations around the Confire contract and where we can amend that. So that's my comments. Looking forward to more discussions.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Toms.
Yes, thank you. Number one, I think it is important that we get the fire contract under control. I know that there's several of our areas here in Pinole that are already have a distribution for Confire. So it seems like we're paying them twice. Also, there's the unincorporated areas of Montalvan Manor, Terra Hills, and Bayview that I believe that our stations 73 and 74 are covering. Confire is receiving a distribution of taxes to Confire from those areas, and so we're not getting a break there. So I think it's important that we do a deeper dive and work with county officials that came up with the contract amount and see if we can get that under control. The other thing I wanted to state that I think is important that we missed this year, and that is doing a meeting with just the council at the beginning of the year to set our priorities. We did that last year, and I think we were doing a good job on figuring out what our priorities are, and then we've kind of diverted away from that. I think it really is important that we take a look at our long-term health benefits for retirees, whether it's going to a two-tier system or what that looks like. But I think we need to get that underway as soon as possible, because that's also is not sustainable. As far as a subcommittee, we do have the finance subcommittee, which is the mayor pro tem, and the city treasurer. So, it would make sense to maybe go through them or a part of those folks sitting on a subcommittee to, go through the budget. And I would just stress that, I'm looking at the budget for community development versus the city council, and the city council's travel budget is 4 times the budget of the community development department that has 10 employees. And they need to keep up their credentials for building inspection and, their planning credentials and all of that. So we need to keep that in mind, and I would just ask the whoever's on the subcommittee to really take a look at that travel budget. So that's all I have on comments.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Toms and Council. The only thing I would say is that as part of the modeling, there's a theory out there for modeling your budget as far as reductions go. So I'm kind of taking an approach of a max and min, right? Like we have, this baseline that was just established by the departments, which I think is great. And then there's to the city manager, what we can maximum do for this year, and then what is our absolute minimum. And it's somewhat creating 3 data points with a 3% reduction, 6% reduction, and then, the 10% reduction. And what that would look like. So I would ask staff to take that into consideration as we're evaluating across all the departments. And what does that mean in service? Now, 3% is one thing, but I don't want people to think that that's linear. A 10% reduction could be, a dramatic thing. And so I just trying to find out where that balance is across each department, while keeping the baseline in our sights, and then whatever we can do to kind of balance out across all departments. But I'm not going to say that a course correction isn't in order. I think the fire is a great place to start. I believe we're on year 3 of the contract. Is it year 3? And so we could start to think about negotiating and what our next 5 years might look like. But to Councilmember Tom's point, there are some things that have changed over the course of the 3 years that we need to make sure that we include in the negotiation portion. So we just hope that you guys can go back, take a look at the budgets, and really find out where what those models would look like. And I feel like we're getting a good jump on this with this meeting. So to have this conversation. So, all right. Okay. Well, not seeing any other comments. Let me go ahead and jump to. Well, looks like we're jumping to adjournment. Item 7, adjournment. So I adjourn this meeting to the regular city council meeting of April 7th in remembrance of Amber Schwartz. Thank you.